All right, everybody. How's everybody doing? We are live back again after a long break. And so, yes, everybody has been busy. And so we didn't find enough time to go and stream. And I see that somebody has already joined. So, welcome, whoever is watching. Thanks for joining in so soon. And sorry that you had to wait. But before we go along and talk about the topic, I'll say like, subscribe, share, do whatever to share this channel. Let's make sure that we cross the 1,000 subs mark within like next week or so, and push on that notification bell so that you get notification whenever there is a stream. And so yes, and welcome Madan, welcome Kelly. How are you two doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Hope everyone's okay. And yeah, this should be an interesting stream. We're going to be analyzing Hamza Tzortzis once more. So I've been, to be honest, I was actually thinking about this topic this week, so it should be a fresh topic to talk about. But yeah, Kylie, how are you doing?
I'm good as well. I'm also excited about this topic. I recommended it so because watched this video a while ago and I had a lot of ideas, a lot of ideas about this topic.
Rebuttals to this, yeah.
Yeah.
This
So
video, yeah.
I thought, yeah, I should be.
Yeah, this has been we have been. Sorry, Kylie, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I think we should just jump into it straight away, to be honest.
Yeah, let's just do it. Let's just go right into it.
All right, let's just jump into it. And all right, I think we did spell the topic, but that doesn't need to be done back again. Right away, we'll share the screen and let's right away jump into the. Can you guys see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers.
All right,
Internal acts of worship.
let's try to. Kelly, do you want to go ahead and just briefly give an idea of the stream, and then let's jump into
Topic?
the point number one straight away, right?
Yeah. I mean, so in this video, Hamza Tzortzis is actually giving a few reasons about exactly 7 reasons as to why God is worthy of worship. He has also written an article on this, and I think that article is quite old. I mean, he wrote it, I think, 7 or 8 years back on his website, so it's still there. He has made several videos on this topic, so it's quite interesting. The kind of reasons he give, they are very. You're gonna see how interesting they are and how easy to rebut they are. So it's an interesting video. Hopefully you're gonna have a lot of fun rebutting his arguments.
All right, that's great. So let me try and figure out where the he starts with point number one.
How long is the video?
Attributes. The oneness of.
Madan, the video is quite long. I think it's about 55 minutes or so. I think.
Okay.
See, can you see it over here? It's 55:22, right? So it's a long video. So what I'm thinking is right away jumping into the main points, and then see what those points are basically, right? And he might, he might take a little while to spell out all those points. So probably might have to, even within the points, we might have to jump a little bit.
So I think if you under the video, so you can, I think I can see there are some moments. So you can go directly to 5 minutes. That should be the in fact one.
Okay, and I think 9 minutes 59 seconds. 9 minutes 59 seconds is the first point that he's starting.
Yeah,
somewhere around here,
which is the gravest,
exactly.
gravest sin.
9 minutes 50.
So I think now we're ready to talk about, well, why is God worthy of worship? Why dedicate our acts of worship to God alone? And I want to talk about 6 or 7 arguments which can be found in the Islamic spiritual.
Are you guys good? Kelly, you wanted to say something, or is that good?
No, I'm also saying it's around 9 minutes. You can just pace it up a bit. I think let's do it at 1.25.
1.25? All right.
Yeah. That's it.
Spiritual tradition, and many of them can be found in the Quran. Point number 1. Reason number 1. God is worthy of worship by virtue of who he is. Let me repeat in a different way. God's right to worship is a necessary fact of his existence. This is the main reason, well, not the main reason, but it's the first reason I want to give you why Allah is worthy of worship. Allah is worthy of worship by virtue of who he is, and not necessarily by virtue of the fact that he's decided to give us anything in this life. Allah says in the Quran in chapter 20 verse 14, indeed, I am God, I am Allah. There is no deity except me. So worship me and establish prayer for my remembrance. So Allah is telling us in the Quran that he is worthy of worship because of who he is, and not only, and not necessarily because he's decided to give us anything in this world. Let me give you some thought experiments or some examples. Think about, for example, your favorite poet. Think about maybe Rumi. Apparently, Rumi said to the nearest effect that lovers, they don't really fall in love. They were already in love before they met. Wow, isn't that amazing? Or Iqbal, the poet of the East, he said this one prostration, the prostration to God, this one prostration that you find so difficult frees you from 1,000 prostrations. Wow. You know, because servitude to the divine breaks the shackles to the servitude to the ephemeral nature of the world, materialism and just the ego. Now, you hearing this, you're probably thinking, wow, that's amazing. Exactly. Maybe you stood up and gave a standing ovation, or you said, bravo, something happened in your heart when you listened to your favorite poet. You are compelled to give due praise to those poets by virtue of their poetic attributes. Let me give you another example. Take, for example, your favorite wrestler. If your wrestler submits his opponent, what do? You may stand, you may scream, you say, wow, brilliant, amazing, bravo, clap. The point is, you are praising that wrestler by virtue of his wrestling attributes, his wrestling skills. We do this with soccer, with football, right? When we see our favorite football player like Messi or Ronaldo, and they do some amazing skill and they score a great goal, you're like, wow, that was amazing. Why did you react that way? Because something is compelled in your heart to give due praise to Messi or Ronaldo by virtue of their football skills. Now, interestingly, all of these examples I've given you, they don't directly benefit you in any way, in any major way. But yet you still give them praise by virtue of who they are, by virtue of their attributes. So if it's true that you do this, and these things, they don't have perfect attributes, these things are deficient and flawed in some way, then what does it mean about praising Allah, whose names and attributes are maximally perfect, with no deficiency and no flaw? It means he deserves the most extensive form of praise. As Allah says in the Quran in the first chapter, Surah Al-Fatiha, the chapter, the opening, Allah says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All perfect praise, extensive praise and gratitude belongs to the Lord of everything that exists. Not because he has given something to us. Yes, we should praise him and thank him for that. But from this point of view, he deserves extensive praise by virtue of who he is. Just look at the universe, brothers and sisters and friends. It's an interplay of divine names and attributes. The mathematical structures in the universe, the fact that we have rational minds that can perform rational insights, that we have inner subjective conscious experiences, the fact that we're conscious, that we kind of have this inner subjective conscious experience known as phenomenal experience. We could have this, but apparently it comes from dead, non-conscious physical processes. The point is, we live in an amazing universe, and it's a manifestation, an interplay of God's divine names and attributes. And God's names and attributes are perfect. They have no deficiency or flaw. They are maximally perfect to the highest degree possible, and they're transcendent. So if we can praise poets, soccer players, football players, wrestlers, by virtue because of their attributes, the attribute of being a good wrestler or a good poet or a great poet or a good football player, even though they are contingent, they're dependent, they're not perfect, they have deficiency and flaw, then what does it mean about praising the divine, praising Allah? That's why Muslims, we say, Allahu Akbar, right? Allah is greater. So, Allah is worthy of worship by virtue of who he is. Now, before I go into the second point, it's very important for everyone to understand, especially as Muslims, especially those people who want to become Muslim and they want to understand worship properly, that we do not have a transactional relationship with God. Many of us have a transactional relationship with the divine, as if we're both peers.
Pause it now.
Right?
Let's
God gives you something you like.
Yeah, I mean, because he's sort of giving a different point right now. So, you know,
Right.
So his first point is that God is worthy of worship by virtue of who he is. But then he goes on giving examples about people's about praising, about how we praise people or different athletes or different skilled people for how they have actually, for what they have done, right? We actually are in awe of how people have, how, what feats of athleticism or any sports that they have performed. So we praise people because of the fact that they have done something, right? So it's not by virtue of who they are. I don't know if that is what he meant, because it's a bit vague what he said. It's not about who they are, it's about
Uh,
what they have done.
I think he confused between two things, and
Yeah,
he's trying to compare God as who he is versus what these guys have these
do.
attributes, right? As in good gamesmanship or skill of footballing skill or something like that. So yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, no. So what I'm saying is that he says that God is worthy of worship by virtue of who he is, but then goes on to give an example of humans praising people for what they have done, or for their display of skill. So I think it's a bit this there is a difference between that, but the bigger problem with his argument is this: we praise people because of the fact that we know as humans there are certain things that are very difficult to achieve for us.
Exactly.
Why? Because we are human, we have certain limitations, there are certain feats that normal humans do not perform. So, for example, most humans cannot do a flip, right? They cannot just flip, they cannot perform a handstand, they cannot perform the way an athletes do. So we are in awe because we think that this is something that is beyond at least our capabilities, or it is very uncommon among humans for someone to achieve something like that. But now the problem is this: now we praise them for that very reason, that because it is uncommon, and we think that they have actually done it. So when we praise them in generally when we praise someone, we are praising them because we assume that they have, there is an underlying assumption that they have achieved that through their hard work, through some sort of effort that they put in into achieving that. Now that is not something that we can apply to God, because God, whoever and however he is, whatever attribute he has not achieved them. He has not achieved them by any effort. He just happens to have them out of necessity. Now we're talking about God, assuming that he exists with all these attributes that that believers, that theists attribute, to allocate to him. So all these attributes that God has, he has them out of necessity. He did not earn them. He did not do anything to achieve these. He did not put any effort into having those attributes. So he just happens to be that way because of necessity. Now, why would that need uh, why would that deserve any sort of praise?
Praise. I think one more thing, Kelly, that he's sorry, I'm interrupting you for a second,
No, no, I've
if
sort of
you
made
don't
my
mind.
point.
Yeah, yeah. One more thing he's saying that our praises are equivalent to our worships, basically, and these are two different things.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you are
you're right.
worshiping,
Yeah, that's a good point.
so when you are worshiping as in you are almost certainly kind of taking somebody to a very different level than a praise. So I praise, say, Lionel Messi, I praise him, or Ronaldo, I praise him. That doesn't mean that I worship him or something. Okay, I see there was another distinction between what Hamza said, and I wanted to point that out, was that he's not making a distinction between two things. I don't praise Messi per se, but I do praise his action or his game, his skills, basically. When he plays,
Mm.
I see a wonderful goal put by him. I praise that. I praise I do definitely praise him as well at times, but most of the times our awes are due to those actions. And just rightly, as you said, uh, kind of a body, a weightlifter kind of, it's not normal for anybody to lift 100 kg weight or 200 kg weight. And when we see somebody lifting that kind of a weight, there is a standard that we compare that with, and then say, oh, this guy has achieved something really, that not too many can achieve. And
Right.
that causes us to praise them, basically. And as you rightly said, God doesn't need anything that he has achieved by himself. He has got all those things as a necessary attribute to him, basically, right?
Right. I just wanted to, an example came to my mind just to further elaborate my point. So, for example, we often see elephants, picking up tree trunks with their own, trunks. So they can easily do that. Now, we don't feel awe or any sense of, awe towards them, or feel like praising an elephant because of the fact that he picked up a trunk. But if a human does it, let's say a human somehow is able to pick up a trunk, now we will be in awe, or we might praise him because that is something we think that a human is not capable of doing. So if someone is not generally considered, not capable of doing something, yet he does it, now then we feel like praising that. But if like an elephant picks up a 500 kg weight, we feel like, okay, it's normal. So God being so powerful innately, without any effort, just out of necessity, whatever he does, nothing is impressive for us. Why? Because he has unlimited
Exactly.
potential. Nothing is
Exactly.
impressive nothing God does would impress us, because he has
Should
unlimited
impress
potential.
us, right?
Yeah,
Right,
it
right.
shouldn't. It shouldn't.
It shouldn't, right? I agree. Madan, you want to add?
Yeah, I think you guys have covered a lot of stuff there that I would have wanted to add. In respect to what he's saying, I'm not 100% sure what he exactly means when he says worship, because I think worship is poorly defined here. Yeah, so he should define what he means by worship and distinguish it from praise. That's the first kind of
Right,
error here. And I'm not sure exactly
right,
what
right.
they mean by, because I actually don't know what the distinction is. It's very difficult. It might be praise multiplied by 1,000. Yeah, it could mean like bodily submission, or submission of one's autonomy or critical faculties. It could mean almost suicidal, sacrificial work.
I think I have a definition. You might not like it, though.
Go ahead.
Praise is someone that you think exists, and worship is something that you don't, that doesn't
Yeah,
exist, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Sorry.
no, it's all right.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what the difference between praise and worship is, other than maybe the intensity. Yeah. But so he should define that. As you guys have mentioned, any sort of notion of praise that we psychologically understand, that we perform within humanity, acknowledges certain behaviors, and they're not intrinsic to a thing, right? It's so this kind of distinction that he's making, that first of all, he says we praise God or we worship God because of not something that he does, but something that he is. And that, again, he poorly defines, he doesn't explain. And like you guys mentioned, he kind of gives examples of everything contrary to that. He doesn't
Yeah.
show what he doesn't show exactly what an example of a thing that is intrinsically, non-behaviorally worthy of praise or reverence. And so I just don't understand it. So at this point, he kind of breaks down as to what he means by praising something that is intrinsic. If anything, it's the opposite. That, like, we usually praise things that are, as you mentioned, hard to accomplish, or is something that is requires tremendous effort or skill to, or even if we forgo those, let's say you are like a hard determinist and you don't believe that there is any such thing that is really hard to accomplish, in the sense that it is hard compared to other things, but some people are just born with genetics, an environment, a brain that enables them to do certain things. For example, for Stephen Hawking, it was just very natural to do that. We still praise him, right? So I'm just trying to give some credence to what Hamza is saying. So maybe he means something like that. That is not. I don't think he is. But let's say Stephen Hawking is somebody who just naturally understands the universe with that level of IQ that he never got himself. And although we may still praise him, he's not doing something necessarily groundbreaking in the sense that it is really, really hard for him. Maybe it is. So maybe some things are, but not everything. And we still praise people. We praise a genius for like solving mathematical. Let's say we ask them a very, very difficult mathematical question, and they just answer it really quickly. Like, what is 61,445 times 6,500,000, whatever? Yeah, and they just do it straight away in their heads. For them, it must have been very easy, and in that we still praise them. So maybe it's something like that in the sense that this is not something they. Even then, it doesn't make more sense. It's still an action. But in this sense, what it breaks down is that we don't just. It might show a counterexample of where we don't just praise somebody for something that is hard for everyone else or them. Even we praise somebody sometimes also for things that are easy for them, but hard for us, maybe in comparison. And maybe that's just maybe there is just a false application of the word praise. Then one, or it might be in the sense that we shouldn't praise them. We should just acknowledge that they've done something good. If everything you guys have said is correct, then we should not be praising this person who's a genius. What I would argue is that they're probably still deserving of praise in the sense that it's still a skill that they've exercised in some sense, even if it's minimal. So this is like a philosophical issue in the sense that if we accept the idea that if somebody accomplishes something that is hard to accomplish and they do it, then it follows that people who find it easy, they're not going to be very deserving of extreme praise. They should be not praised, or at least not praised as much. I don't know how to resolve that. Maybe that's just a breakdown in our concepts of philosophy. Maybe there's a third thing that we should call this. Maybe they should be, acknowledged in some other way. So, but even if we go with that kind of thing, it implies some sort of behavior, some sort of action. So I'm not sure what it means by it is intrinsic in the nature of God. But that also sparks up other considerations. For example, if something is intrinsic in the nature of God, is it worthy of praise because it is actually worthy of praise? Or is it worthy of praise because it's arbitrary to God or whatever God holds? What sort of thing it is? And then that leads to a sort of similar use of a problem that applies in the sphere of praise. So is God a praiseworthy being because he actually lives up to the ideals of being praiseworthy? Or is it he just a praiseworthy being because he just happens to be God and whatever he says, and that has the same impact as the normal Euthophro dilemma has, right? And if it is arbitrary to him, then praise simply becomes we have to acknowledge God irrespective of what ability possesses or abilities or attributes he possesses. If he had the attribute of tyranny, that would be worthy of praise. If he had the attribute of liking rape, that would be worthy of praise. Or if he was just some whatever, just a random generation of
murderous thug.
Yeah. That even if he doesn't perform any actions, let's just bite the bullet for a minute and just assume that makes sense. He has some attribute that is worthy of praise. But what is that attribute? It's just an arbitrary trait. But if it is actually worthy of praise, then it will have to be something independent to him that he adheres to. So and in that case, it might be something like the reason that he's worthy of praise is because he's a benevolent being, and benevolent beings should be worthy of praise. And an extremely benevolent being is worthy of extreme praise, and maybe that's equivalent to worship, something like that. Okay, that is the best I can make out of that. Maybe if there is a God, omnipotent deity, who's also omnibenevolent, he possesses the attribute of omnibenevolence.
So Madan, can I just ask you to clarify this point? You're saying the worship or the praise can only be had if that attribute is independent of the subject being praised.
No.
In this case, God.
Huh?
Not exactly.
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, if it made sense that God has an attribute, and it doesn't stand independent to God, it makes sense of it. If basically the Euthyphria dilemma could be solved in favor of the arbitrary problem or something, and it made sense. So those are
No,
two
I'm
separate
saying it
issues.
can't be solved arbitrary problem. It can't be. Then it becomes the case that
Then it becomes the case. If it can't be solved, then but because I want to keep this conceptually separate, right? So it's not necessarily dependent upon that, but when you take it together, when you take Euthyphria issues together with praise,
right.
When you add those two together, it equals that. For it to be properly praiseworthy, it seems to be the case that it can't be arbitrary, at least. It can't be arbitrary.
It has to be independent,
right? Because why is something worthy of merit or praise if it's arbitrary, right? Or random? We need to be more specific what that thing is. Why should be? And let's say that thing is malice. Then let's say you bite the bullet and say that it is independent of God. There is an independent standard that God has to adhere to. The reason God is praiseworthy is because he has X attribute, and that attribute is something independent to him. It's not arbitrary. So it could be malevolence even. It could be malevolence. It could just be that malevolence is that independent standard. And because God is malevolent, he's worthy of praise. Again, that doesn't make sense. It's like a contradiction, maybe. Maybe somebody would say it's like a married bachelor, right? That the following sentence, that a malevolent being is worthy of praise, is like a contradiction. So that's another point that you can make, because malevolence is not worthy of praise. So that kind of defies common sense for Hamza. If he made that sort of argument, clearly then he's going to have to make the argument that God has to possess an attribute like benevolence, right? Something like that. Something that is intuitively makes sense. When I say intuitively, I don't mean intuitive in the way Hamza, what's his name? Daniel Hakikiju made.
Daniel Hakikiju, right?
What I mean is it's like a brute fact, in the sense that when we say praise, something is good, we link it to, it's almost interchangeable with goodness, right? Praise.
So you're sort of changing the definition of praise.
Exactly.
You're defining it in a different way. You're equating it with something else in a way, right? So
I think it's
the normal
becoming
how we normally use it.
Yes.
So you're, as you said, that you're equating praise with sort of innate good or goodness or benevolence.
I think it's becoming tautology, basically tautological in a sense.
Exactly. So ultimately, Hamza can only say that I think God is deserving of anything if it is some action or behavior or something, some sort of personality
which he demonstrates by his examples, right? He all his examples were about people doing something or demonstrating their skills. So it all pertains to people doing something, not about who they are, because unless they manifest their skill,
actions more so.
we don't know them.
Exactly.
So we cannot praise them for that. And just one of the points that you mentioned, that maybe, and we do praise people and we do praise things despite the fact that we know that maybe very little or no effort was actually put into achieving that feat or that level. But I think once again, what we are actually praising is the fact that this is something that normal humans or majority of the humans are not capable of doing. And therefore, in a sense, we think it seems to us that this is something unachievable or something very difficult to achieve. So that what's happening in our mind, what's going on in our head is that he has done something which seems to us as if it required a lot of effort, and therefore we praise him because we believe or assume that he must also have put in that effort. If, however, we are sure that someone has not put any effort or has put very little effort into something to achieve something, then I think we don't praise people or anything for that. For example,
I think though, Kylie, just 1 minute. I think that could also be a bit of a disturbance in our normal social usage of praise. I mean, we're not all philosophically consistent, right? And it could just be that as human beings, we poorly or not reflected long enough to think whether certain things are meritworthy and certain things are not meritworthy. It could very well be that somebody who spontaneously can just answer questions, like a mathematical genius, isn't deserving of that sort of praise. It might be deserving of a different
Right.
sort, right?
Very,
I
very
think
good point. Very good
and that
point.
yeah
That is a very good point. Yes.
yeah. Because I think if you're like really tall, we don't praise them. We don't go, oh, you're 7 foot tall. Wow, good, well done. Sit down. And we don't really. If anybody says
Yeah.
that, they don't really mean it. It's not an achievement. They didn't do anything, right? So maybe I think it's just the wrong usage of wrong emotion being generated in us. Really,
Exactly.
and I think that does open the doorway to like the free will debate. That's what like people like popularizers of lack of free will, like Sam Harris, argues that because we don't have free will, that lots of things are not blameworthy, and similarly, lots of things are not praiseworthy, right? And that might be like a hard pill to swallow. What I wouldn't go that far, at least right now. I don't want to talk about the free will debate entirely, but what it does show is that maybe some behaviors should be less. We shouldn't apply the word praise to it, or we shouldn't revere them like they've done something amazing.
Maybe we should use the word awe. We might be in awe of that,
and we want them
but
to continue to do it. Yeah, we want them to
Exactly,
continue to do it. Yeah, because they're improving humanity, and they're very lucky. And some people would probably say that you've been gifted, if you believe in God, you've been gifted by God, right? This is not your own doing. Like if you're a tremendous singer, yeah, you have a tremendous ability, but is it something that require that they've achieved through their own merit? Because if we link praise to merit only, then that's the problem. We won't say this is praiseworthy. But maybe because praise isn't just linked to merit, maybe so. One is that if praise is linked to merit, then we're wrongly applying the word praise. The second point is that there might be more than one condition for praise. Yeah, it could just be that praise is both one where somebody accomplishes a tremendous feat in general, that is like you said, compared to the rest of humanity. This is just a very good skill, and it improves humanity a lot. Or where it's a difficult feat for somebody, and he overcomes some sort of struggle, where there's a lot of merit expended, a lot of hard work expended, labor expended, and he overcomes it and he achieves something. That might be also worthy of praise. Maybe it's just something like that. Whatever the case,
I think there are different levels of praises and awes.
Yeah.
Probably, I think we are maybe there is another word that could be used for somebody who's already accomplished, kind of a prodigy or something. You are in awe with those prodigies, but you praise
Yeah.
someone more for somebody that who's been a mediocre student, but then one day you find he's like a CEO of some really big short company like Google or Microsoft or something like that. So you have like a tremendous praise for that guy. Okay, he really struggled hard and then achieved all those goals, pretty much something like that. But then for somebody who's like a born prodigy, who's like achieved a PhD in like 12 years of age or something like that, you are still in awe of that, but then you don't say, hey, you really struggled to achieve those things. So maybe there are these distinctions to be made, probably.
So yeah, this is, I think, the most important point that Mahajan just mentioned, that the examples that Hamza just gave, those were the examples where we do give praise, but do these people actually deserve praise? That is the question, and that is the question that he's trying to answer here. And that is where he still need to answer that question. Why does something deserve our praise? If he does not answer that question, then the question remains open, and he has not yet answered our question. So that is a very important part of
Right.
part of refuting this logic that he just gave. And also the question that we asked, what is worship? What does he mean by worship? Praise might come out unintentionally. It might not be deliberate. But when we are talking about worship is deliberate, at least when theists or normal believers are talking about it, right? Whatever it is, there can be a lot of ideas about what worship is, but whatever it is, I think they do mean something deliberate, because that is why you have to actually convince people of worshipping God, right? You are here to answer a question. Why do you think you need to answer that question? Because people don't innately know why we should do it, and we don't probably do it deliberately. I mean, don't do it, unintentionally or just or automatically. So worship is a deliberate act, and therefore the question arises: why should we do something? Because whenever we're doing something deliberately, we need reasons for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we have covered a lot of ground about this logic.
All right.
Uh,
Shall we
I
move
guess
on to the
let's go
point
on.
number
Yeah,
two then?
yeah.
Let me just, before
I,
you move on, let me just list two or three more things that might be a reoccurring theme throughout this. I've already mentioned like the Euthyphro dilemma, application of the Euthyphro dilemma here. Obviously, we have problems with worship and problems with praise and what real deserved free praise means and so on. But then there's a few more other issues that'll probably be a reoccurring theme, which is the problem of subjectivity on part of Hamza. So this is more of an inconsistency on part of Hamza. If he makes the argument that atheistic morality or humans generating more, and you've heard me say this in the past, excuse me, atheistic morality or human values or human mind coming up with things they're all evaluative, mind-dependent judgments that don't exist in mind independently. Well, Hamza has to sit here and then figure out why God is deserving of praise, and how is he doing that using his mind. So he has to use his own human values to assess and analyze and evaluate the value, the value of God, right? So when he makes a statement like, for example, he's deserving of praise, he's almost saying it's very synonymous to God is good and one should obey God or something like that. Very similar, but it might not mean the same thing. But it's still a value-laden judgment. And remember what he's argued. He's been arguing so far for all of his career that human beings can't. Human values are subjective, and they are not mind independently true. They're not facts. Well, in that universe that he's inhabiting, where that's the logic that he's deploying, is as applicable to him than any other human being, because he is a human being and he now stranded in this barren universe. Well, not barren universe, but stranded in this meaningless, purposeless, valueless universe, more nihilistic universe. He has to use his brain to work out why God is deserving of praise. But how is he doing that other than using subjective language? Like even the examples that he uses, like there are virtues, like this guy did perform this feat, a basketball player did this, a computer engineer did this, or all of his other examples, and these are value judgments. So whether it's an action or whether it's a physical attribute or something within internally to God, he is having to make a value judgment. Another way of putting this is that he is saying that in another context, he would say that we can't assess, atheists can't subjectively value the objectivity of God's moralities or something like that, or we don't have a moral language that is true. But if you don't have a moral language that is true, then you don't have a moral framework to assess God's morality. In other words, if you remember the example that I gave, if every single human being cannot understand an alien language, then when an alien comes along, how are we going to know that when the alien is speaking, he's speaking to a competent standard, to the right standard, a high level standard? How do we know that? Nobody in the human race is competent to understand, right, the alien language, right? So it's a foreign language, and we have no benchmark, framework, criterion to assess whether the alien is talking at a high level standard or a low level standard. And the same applies here. If we don't have a standard in which we can judge values, then how is Hamza now going against that, what he's saying in the past, and is making the argument that he can in fact assess that God is deserving of worship or praise? These are all subjective terms. How is he using his human subjectivity to to make this judgment? Is a contradiction, right? The last two, I know.
Madhav,
Go on.
Madhav, can I interrupt you? So
Yeah.
one thing that is possible, let me make a case for Hamza over here, right?
No.
He said these arguments are enlisted in the Quran and probably in the Sunnah, right? And
Mm.
if somebody can prove to you that this book is really a word of God, basically, or a word of Allah, right? Then can he claim that these arguments are valid, right? Then that
No,
subjectivity goes away, right?
No, not
no.
really.
You see, still the problem would remain that let's say Quran is from God, The question that he's trying to answer is, why is God worthy of worship? Let's say
Right.
Quran is
No,
from God.
if these arguments are given in the Quran as okay, why do I want to be worshipped, right? Kind of something like that, right?
So now, if he's giving this kind of arguments, then probably he's not God, because these are very flawed arguments.
No, I mean, yes, we can take it to a step further, right? And then at least then say from his perspective, from that belief system that he's holding, he at least is taking it from he's at least epistemically he's justified to say that if I believe that this book is from God, Allah, and then if
Yeah,
it's
but
written
it
over
needs to
there,
be
these
filled.
arguments, then
Yeah, it needs to be filled in more, like why he believes that book is from God. So let's say it's because he performed a miracle, right? It wouldn't
right.
it wouldn't show. Yeah, it wouldn't show. Just put it in another context. Let's put it in that same context as the alien. If you prove the existence of the alien, yeah, it doesn't mean then when the alien is talking to us, which we hear as gibberish, right? Because we don't have a language to understand the alien. It doesn't mean when the alien is talking that we can know that the alien is talking sense or making sense or is a good competent standard. So when God says that I am deserving of praise, just because you prove the existence of God doesn't mean his statement "I am deserving of praise" is true.
It's
Yeah,
true. Yeah.
you need to show why is he deserving of praise. And the problem here is when Hamza Tzortzis says atheists can't have an objective moral framework, they can't use value-laden terms, or humans without God can't do it. He includes himself in that because he also says that without God, he can't have a morality. He needs God's morality. And he needs God's values. There is no values. This universe is not filled with value other than what God provides. That is similar to the statement that this alien language that is the only language that exists, or something like that, right? And nobody else has any language. And the only way we can have language is through this alien language. And the only way we can have a competent language is having through the alien language. But if we don't have a language and we don't understand the alien language, then we can never know whether the alien is talking in a competent language because we don't have a language. And it's the same applies here. If we prove the existence of God and all the other arguments go through, he still needs to show how we can know that when God says he's deserving of praise, which is a value statement, like it's deserving, it's good to worship God. You ought to also, how he circumvents the problem here, where he has human subjectivity to only assess whether or not God is worthy. He's using his limited values to assign a value to God. He needs to transcend that, and he can't. And if he's saying that his values are false or on his own, like without God, his language to assess these things won't work. That's what he's saying when he says our values don't work. Then he has no language to be able to transcribe what God is saying. So it is like the alien who's talking at alien language in an alien language, and we don't know the alien language. So there's a language gap. And in the same sense, there's a value gap here. If you need to, so my point here is that humans have to understand, have a framework already agreed upon, accept an accepted framework of praise versus non-praise. And then we use those values to assess God. Without that, how are we bridging that gap? How are we going to assess God, whether God's values are correct or not? Yeah. If we can't use our values to judge whether God is correct, and we just have to take God's word for it, then how do we know God is telling the truth? Because it's just like the alien saying, I am the best speaker of alienhood, whatever, or this alien
No,
language.
I see your point, Madan. I
Yeah.
see your point, and I agree with that. I mean that's perfectly fine. That you can't for sure know what whether God's telling the truth and all those things. I'm saying, considering this, that you believe that the book is correct and is the word of God, right? You can we can take it another level farther and question whether that's really coming. That's the God is saying the truth or not. I'm just saying, once you have believed that that book is from God, and once that God, whatever is written in that book, is correct from that God, then whatever is written there, and if that God says over there that these are the 7 reasons why I should be worshipped, then you'll at least then it is not your subjective opinion at that point, or at least not your subjective value judgment, right? At least so far, so I think. But I
No,
mean,
it would
I
be.
do agree to
It,
your point.
it would be because you have to use your subjective judgment to decide why God is worthy of worship. Because worthiness. How do you understand worthiness? It's like how we talked about regarding euthypro. What is benevolence? We have to have a concept of benevolence as being good to then go, okay, this is a benevolent behavior and this is good. If you don't have a concept of benevolence, then benevolence is an undefined term.
Yeah,
And the same thing,
sorry.
yeah.
So just sorry for cutting you off, but
Mm.
Philo, I mean, if he has given us reasons, if those reasons do make sense to us, then
Yes.
fine. I think it might be apparent clear to us why he is worthy of
Mm.
worship.
Well,
Those reasons have not yet been presented to us. Let's
yeah,
say
Kylie, but here's the
if
thing, Kylie, because our values are subjective, Hamza can't make that decision. And that's what I'm trying to show.
yeah,
Yeah,
Hamza can't, Hamza
yeah.
can't, yes.
Because we are, as in we can obviously, if we have a different this, I'm trying to raise an inconsistency in Hamza's philosophy. Yeah, so that if the
No, but
premise is, yeah, if the
I'm just
premise
answering
is,
to Philo's question though. He's saying that if God somehow gives us if God gives us 7 reasons, and so if God gives us, so Philo, it's not about God giving us reason. I would say if anyone gives us one reason which shows that he's worthy of worship, then fine, he's worthy of worship. It doesn't matter who gives us that reason. So now, if when it comes from God, then you could say God has instructed us to worship Him. Fine, then we'll worship Him as an instruction. We'll obey Him as an instruction. We still won't. It will still won't be clear to us why he worthy of this worship. So we might follow His instruction, but we still might not be clear, might not be aware of why is he worthy of worship. If he gives us a reason, then it doesn't matter if he's giving us a reason of why he's worthy of worship or anybody else is giving us a reason. If that reason is actually valid and it makes sense, then he's worthy of worship irrespective of who gives us that reason, I would
So,
say.
yeah,
so you are saying worthiness, by definition, finding worthiness is a very subjective thing. Is that what you're saying? If I,
Yeah, it's seemingly subjective. It's somehow
it's
someone
seemingly
can
subjective, right? So,
give us
and
an
then you
objective
cannot ever.
criteria. Yeah, if someone can actually give us an objective criteria to judge what is worthy of worship, or how to judge whether something is worthy of worship or not, then fine, we can consider that and see if it does make sense. Then fine, we might be able to conclude that yes, this is how we decide whether something is worthy of worship or not.
All right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All
I
right.
mean,
I think let's move on.
yeah, yeah. If
Martin, you
you,
want
if you
to add
believe in
something?
if you believe in objective values, that's different. But if you are an ardent critic of values being entirely subjective and there's no such
Yeah.
thing as mind independently true values, then when you sit down and try and understand God's nature or attributes and go, this is what makes him worthy, you've already performed a value judgment, and that's a contradiction, right? That's a contradiction in saying that if something is worthy of worship and you're saying that this is like an objective truth, right? Then you contradict yourself because you just said values are not
Or
objective. They're
subjective, right? Yeah.
subjective, right?
You are trying to find an objective value based on your
Yeah, because
subjective.
you're using and you because you have to
Right.
use your
Right.
own values to assess God's values. There's
Right.
a
Right. Right.
there's an
I see
unbridgeable
that. I see your point.
subjectivity. Yeah, there's an
Right.
unbridgeable subjectivity involved, and therefore you can never say God is worthy of worship any more than I can say under Hamza's world, any more than I can say that I am worthy of the most worship, single-handedly.
All
Worship
right.
me,
I
Mahdi.
think I think
Yeah,
you're talking about an art apart from. Yeah.
and that's not, I've not, yeah, I've not, yeah, kind of. I've not talked about that yet, but the Izod naturally follows from that. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
if Hamza
But
again,
let's not go there. Let's not go there, Martin. I mean, we have already opened a
yeah,
lot
all
of
right, yeah, 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 okay,
All
arguments. So
right. Okay.
let's just move on to the next one.
yeah.
Move on to the
We're
next one.
getting a few comments though. I know. I mean,
Let's see some of the comments.
yeah. Let's see what people
I
are
think
saying.
let's read a few comments here. Okay. I'll start with the from the very beginning. Okay. All right. I have to do my. This is from Milk. I have to do my
So
prayer. I'll be back in
he
six
was
minutes
going for
or
his
so.
worship. Okay.
All right. Worshipping. Hi, sirs. I really like your channel. Thanks, Abdul. Uh, I think God is worthy of worship in virtue of His being. All right.
So I guess you'll have to explain what do you mean by that? And because that is one of the questions that we just raised. What do you mean by virtue of his being? And Mahadin has raised a very good point about that. You should go back and listen to that part. We're not going to repeat it because we've already discussed that in quite a lot of detail.
Quite a long. Yeah, we have spent almost 50 minutes on that right now so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'm back. This is from Milk. All right, I'm back. So, what's your main argument? I think you'll have to listen back to this 50 minutes. Yeah.
There are many arguments. Many of them
Yeah.
are equally important. They're equally primary. So you should listen to them.
Also,
I
what's
think
your
it should
belief?
be apparent what our belief is, right? So
Okay. Are you an atheist, Madan? How about you, Callie?
I'm an agnostic.
Yeah.
All right.
But this
Okay,
question
so
would
you're
still
arguing
remain.
that God did not put effort into creation, therefore he's not worthy of worship. So, Milk, you'll
So,
have to really think through it. Did God
yeah,
put any effort? If he put any effort in creation, then he's limited by putting an
no,
effort.
the primary question
Who puts
here
an
is,
effort? Limited beings
yeah,
put effort, right?
a better
For God, it
question
should be
is,
effortless, pretty much. For God, it should be effortless.
it should be effortless. And a better question is, what is the standard against which we judge whether something is worthy of worship or not? Hamza gave us some examples, and we were judging based on his
Yeah.
examples, based on what
What are
we understood from his logic.
subjective human judgments?
Yeah,
What
exactly. So
criticizes humans, other humans
exactly.
for, you know?
Exactly. So
Right,
he gave
right.
us examples of why we praise other humans. We discussed those examples, and we discussed why we praise people, and why those examples or those cases do not apply to God. You should listen to those arguments based on this foundation that I just told you. We are responding to Hamza's logic and arguing why his logic or the kinds of examples that he's giving does not apply to God, and why that does not make God worthy of worship or worthy of praise, because he's equating worthy worship with praise, and that's a very big problem. We have not discussed raised that point yet, but Hamza over here has equated praise with worship, whereas worship is exclusive to God in Islam, and I think in other religions as well. So only Hamza, when he says worship, he's talking about something that is exclusive to God. We cannot do that in any way or any way or form to another human or to anything other than God. So he is not clearly talking about praise when he's talking about worship. So that is another problem. So do think about
Right,
it in
right,
that way.
right. What I'll tell Milk is to, once this stream is finished, keep listening from here on to this
Yeah.
stream, and once it is finished, go back and listen to the time that he missed, basically, right? What is it? Imagine if Elon gives you $100, it's not that much money for Elon Musk, and it's effortless for him. Does that mean that you should not be thankful for the money?
So what? Why should I? I mean, what if I'm not? What's the problem with it? Would Elon Musk mind? No, it shouldn't matter. I mean, if I'll give you an example, and the example that you're giving, actually, I'll give you an example why that would actually disprove your case. The kind of example Hamza is giving, or that the example you are giving. So let's say a person only has $1,000 worth, and let's say besides him is Elon Musk, who's what his worth is. Let's say that person who only has $1,000 gives me $100 out of those $1,000 he has, and beside him is Elon Musk, and he also hands me $100 buck. Who do you think I would be more thankful of? So I would be more thankful of the person who only had $1,000, who only had limited resources, and yet gave me, limited just $1,000, and he gave me 10% of that worth.
Yeah. So
But
Milk,
yeah.
go sorry, finish off. Let me just
Yeah. So as compared to Elon, who is in a way almost infinitely more wealthy than this person, I would be more thankful to this person who only had $1,000. So if you are giving me that example, then I should be more praiseful of a human who is benevolent to me, who helps me out because he has limited resources to help me, yet he helps me. Whereas God has unlimited resources and he's benevolent to me because he has no cost of being benevolent to me. So should I be okay? So I'm let's say, in by that logic, I'm ready to praise God, but I should be more thankful towards a human who is benevolent to me out of his own free will, rather because he did
Yeah.
that with limited resources as compared to God who has unlimited resources.
Yeah, so
By
I
that
was going
logic, that would
to make the same point to Milk, in the sense that, keep in mind, worship and praise is different. Worship means, and God is supposed to be the most worship worthy being, the most
yeah,
worship worthy. But according to Milk's own logic, yeah, he's already recognizing that if somebody gives you £100, it's not much money, but and it's effortless. You still should be thankful for that money. But he recognizes already that in certain situations, if there's lots of risk, is lots of effort, lots of hardship, lots of constraints. So, like you just said, if there's somebody gives you 10% of 1,000, it's more than if somebody gives you like 0.1% of if you're rich, you know, etc. So he already recognizes that we should be praiseworthy of things that are more difficult. But if that's the case, then it seems as though counterintuitively it contradicts itself, in the sense that we should be worshiping human beings more so than God, right? So
exactly.
even so that kind of is a big problem in that sort of with that sort of thinking.
Line of reasoning.
Yeah,
But
one more point.
but
Sorry,
woman,
Hamza, finish
before you go,
Yeah,
Milk, the other thing is, Milk, the thing that I wanted to say is, Milk, if you are giving so you're contradicting Hamza right now. You're saying that if somebody does something, but Hamza says it's not because of some God does something. This is the main primary reason why we praise. He does give action. Well, to be clear, he does say that sometimes it is due to actions, but it's not just because of actions. But here's the problem with this sort of thinking: if you're using stuff like what the being does to assess whether it's deserving of praise, then you also have to take into account what the being does in terms of hardship, pain, suffering, trauma, disaster, natural disasters, genetic abnormalities, or the quote unquote evil and suffering in the world, etc., to assess whether or not he's deserving of non praise or blame, right? But in that instance, you don't want to deal with those facts, or you want to appeal to, for example, that there might be some sort of future reward in the future, or there might be some good reason that we're not privy to, right? But if you go down that route, the problem here becomes is that then you can no longer also assess whether or not giving God giving you life, for example, or giving you a child is worthy of praise, because it might not be worthy of praise. It might be it might not, because you're saying you can't, if you can't assess the evil, then you should not be able to assess the good. So if you think the good things in life can be assessed, then you have to assess the evil things as well.
the evil things as well. And then
Yeah,
you should be able to, he should be deserving of curses as well, in a sense.
curses as well. Yeah, but he's saying he's
And
not
he's
deserving.
going to
Yeah,
he's going
then
to
you have
raise
to
that
also
point.
say that when that child is born, and you think this is good, you can't say it's good. You can't say this is deserving of praise, right? So you've got a contradiction there, in the sense that you have to either explain all the evil and reconcile it with why is it deserving of praise. But if you try and reconciling it by saying the evil isn't really evil, or we're going to learn that it's not it's actually good, or we can't assess evil with our limited imaginations, then apply the same things to all the good things in the world, like babies being born, rainbows, love and happiness. Apply to that. It may be that happiness that you're looking at right now isn't really happiness. Maybe in the future you're going to learn that this is actually due to great evil. Or maybe you don't have because your senses are limited, you can't assess all that good stuff. If you can't assess the evil, you can't assess the good, basically. So that's what happens when you go down that route. I think we've got a million other comments now.
Yeah, let's move on. I think we can keep talking on his
Yeah.
point, but let's move on. All right. I think Abdul 0333. I think
Why do I get
Madan
to
is
touch
wrong.
my notice now?
If it's possible that any being is worthy of worship. Sorry, Madan, did you say something?
I said, why do I get the impression I know this guy? But I probably don't. It's all right.
No, but again, Abdul is just, even in this comment, he's just asserting that no, he's still worthy of worship. Why? That is what we're discussing, right? You're not giving me any reason.
That's our point.
You're just
Basically, that's
explaining.
why we have this whole stream. Basically,
You're saying that he's worthy of worship because he's worthy of worship. What does that mean?
right.
We were here to answer. We are listening to Hamza and maybe you as well. We're reading your comment to get any reasons, to know any reasons. Why is he worthy of worship? If you're going to say just so, then you're not giving us any reasons.
Yeah, and Abdul,
I think maybe.
Yeah, before you continue, Abdul, if there is a necessary being, how do you establish a necessary being? Using maybe a few arguments, maybe like say the contingency argument. The contingency argument doesn't establish that the being is a good one, or it has any attributes that are worthy of praise. What does an attribute that look? What do you mean when you say there's an attribute that is worthy of praise? Or I don't know what that means. What do you mean?
How
I don't
do
get
you
it.
how do you even establish those attributes are present,
Yeah.
right? All
What
you
if I
can
said
do is a necessary existence, right?
What if I say a table has an attribute that is worthy of praise? What does that mean? It's intrinsically within the table that makes it worthy of praise. It's the nature of the table. These are all vagaries. Can you see the vagary? If I say there's a nature of the table that is worthy of praise, the first thing you'll be asked, what is that nature of the table that makes it worthy of praise? Is it the color, the shape, the size, the height, the smell? What is it? What are you talking about? You need to be more clear. So when you say, Abdul, that there's a necessary being and one of its attributes is it makes it worthy of worship, you have to be much more clear on what you mean by what that attribute is. First of all, how do you establish that attribute? If it's the contingency argument or fine-tuning argument, show how logically it establishes through premises that one of the attributes that must exist in this being is something that is worthy of praise, and then explain what that attribute is. That's a mammoth task. There's nothing in the contingency argument established anything like that. All you get in the contingency argument at best is probably an infinitely existing, eternally existing being, but doesn't mean he has any specific attributes. I don't think you can do that. Yeah, and
I think let's.
Yeah, sorry.
All right,
Go on.
let's move on.
No, I was saying let's move. We have spent 1 hour on this, although it reserved this much time, but I think let's.
I think we'll be swift with the other points, but let's
Hopefully.
because this was the first point. I think this is the most damaging point probably, and the others will be easy. Hopefully, I hope.
No. Yeah, both of you guys, I think we should engage with these comments because they.
We should.
We should. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we should engage. And in fact, I was gonna say like 5 minutes ago, I was gonna say that if Abdul or Milk they do want to come and join, maybe at a later point, maybe we'll only cover 2 points or so, and then cover the other points in some other stream, and maybe have them come and talk to us if they want to, probably. And if you guys are okay with it, right? That's what I was thinking. So.
Yeah. So, and Abdul says again, worthy of worship is tantamount to ought to be. I think that's the expression of tantamount. Is that ought to be worshipped? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, it's almost circular, of course. But then, worthy of worship. Again, you have to use your subjective human morality to assess.
Sorry, Mahaden, just stopping. I think what he's saying is worthy of worship is not equivalent to be ought to be worshipped, right? That's what his sign over here. Yeah.
Say that again. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a weird sign.
It's a weird sign, but he's saying worthy of worship is not equivalent to ought to be worshipped, basically.
I don't know. Then what do you mean by that? It's not a.
So
he's
saying, okay, distinguish between these two. And ought is something that you ought to do something. So he's saying it's not ought to be. He's not saying ought to be worshipped. Basically, he's saying he's worthy of worship. But
what does worthy mean? Something that should be worshipped.
Worthy.
What does worthy worship mean? Yeah.
It's a normative
right? That's a problem with his. But I'm saying what his sign language is meaning. Basically, his sign language.
Yes. If he means that, then
he's.
So in both cases, let's say if he's saying worthy of worship is equal to ought to be worshipped, then fine, we already know that. And if he means worthy of worship does not mean equal to ought to be worshipped, then what does it mean? What do you mean by worthy of worship? Worthy of worship, from what we understand when we hear the phrase worthy of worship, we mean should be worshipped, something that should be worshipped. That's what I understand from it. So I'm not sure what he means by that. So what's the next comment?
Before you just continue, before you just finish, like you just said, when you say worthy of worship, you need to define what worthy means then, if it's not ought to be worshipped.
I think there might be a distinction between those two, and I'm just
Maybe
thinking,
he has something in his mind.
putting
Let's
a hat
wait
on
for
it.
it.
I mean,
How does he explain it?
see, worthy
No.
is something that you say.
Abdul, because at this moment, we have the more reasonable position. When you say worthy of worship, it's worthy to worship A versus B. You're saying that it's more valuable, and therefore you ought to worship A more so than B. That seems to be the very commonsensical, intuitive way of understanding this.
I think the word worthy. Sorry.
Yeah, if you are now suggesting the opposite, that worthy of worship isn't ought to be worshipped, then you have the burden of proof to show that to move it away from the commonsensical position, which probably means your philosophy here is more complicated and convoluted than the basic one, because you'll have to perform a few gymnastical moves here to separate worthiness from you ought. That it doesn't necessarily entail an ought statement, like a normative statement. Worthy is usually an evaluative statement. It usually means A is better than B, and in some respect, and it's worth something in some respect, and that implies ought. And when you say, and the expression worthy of worship, it means that you ought to worship. So I just wanted to really cement and reinforce that, so that they understand that, that's the burden that he has to cross. You want to go to the next one?
All right, let's move on to the next. Milk has quite a few comments as well. Let's go through them quickly.
So
and how do you know something is worthy of worship? It's because it got created.
Philo, can you hear me?
Easy.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, the rest of the comments that Milk just gave, I think we can go through them, but I think then also before responding to that, because all of these comments would be covered in the points that Hamza is going to raise further, because he goes on to, so if we go through Milk's comments, he's talking about benevolence and whatever we have received, the good things in life, right? What God has bestowed upon us. Hamza does raise that point. We can, if you want, we can go through his points, and then we are going to tell him that we'll respond to your questions under Hamza's, when we talk about Hamza's argument for it.
Other arguments, the same argument, right? The argument number 2, 3, whatever, right? Up to 7.
Yeah, but by that time, Milk may disappear.
I think the very next point might be that. So let's just read his comments, and then
let's just highlight and then see if Milk is going to be Milk. If you are listening, if you wait, probably we are going to cover some of these points in future arguments that Hamza makes. If not, then we'll handle those.
I think Hamza's very next argument is this, so there shouldn't be a problem. You can just go through his comments. So.
All right. I'll just highlight his comments, or maybe let's wait. Okay, let's go.
You give him some worship. This is not the Islamic spiritual tradition. First and foremost, we're not peers with the divine. He created us. He is our Rabb, our Master, our Lord, our loving Lord. We are his servants and slaves. He is our Master, and we are his servant and his slave. So from this point of view, there is no peer here. And what's very important to understand is that if we understand this point that Allah is worthy of worship, God is worthy of worship because of who he is, and not necessarily what he has given us, then even if we don't get what we want, Allah is still worthy of worship. In actual fact, if the whole universe were to worship him, it would not increase in his majesty and bounty. If the whole universe were to not worship him, it would not decrease in his majesty and bounty. Such is Allah, such is God. He is worthy of worship because of who he is, and not necessarily...
Madin, you're getting a feedback from Madin's side.
Madin, there is a horrible feedback from your side.
All right.
Or were you saying something?
No, I think he's muted himself. So Philo, continue.
Okay.
You know, because he's given us anything. So we shouldn't have a transactional relationship with the divine from that point of view. Yes, he deserves thanks and gratitude, which are forms of worship. because of the things that he's given us, but it's not primarily because of that. Well, that's not the only reason, because we could end up with the crumbs of the universe, but he still deserves extensive praise. So Allah is worthy of worship because of who he is. He deserves extensive praise, and that is a form of worship. Second point. God has created us and sustains everything. Allah says in the Quran, in chapter 35, verse 3, O mankind, remember the favor of God upon you. Is there any creator other than God who provides for you from the heaven and the earth? There is no deity except him, so how are you deluded? So let's zoom in on this point. Allah is worthy of worship because he created us. Okay, what does that mean? Well, listen to this very carefully. Allah, God, gives us something at every moment of our existence that we don't earn, own, or deserve, yet it's priceless. Let me repeat. God gives us something at every moment of our existence that we don't earn, own, or deserve, but it's priceless. And this thing is this conscious moment and the next conscious moment and every conscious moment of our existence. Life is a priceless gift. If I were to say to you, you have 10 minutes left to live, but to get another 10 days, you have to give me all of your wealth, you will give me all of your wealth. It's a priceless gift. And we receive it freely at every moment of our existence. And we don't earn it, own it, or deserve it. We can't even create a fly. So if that's the case, we receive something that is priceless for free, that we don't earn, own, or deserve. How should it make us feel? Grateful. Ultimately grateful. For every conscious moment. For every conscious moment. For life and the potential to use this life. We must be ultimately grateful because we receive something free that is priceless at every moment of our existence that we don't earn, own, or necessarily deserve. And having utmost gratitude, ultimate gratitude towards the divine is an act of worship. Just like what we mentioned previously, we must give him extensive praise. That's an act of worship, and ultimate gratitude is also an act of worship. Also, we have to understand here that since Allah is our creator, he sustains everything. And we are dependent on him alone. Allah is al-Ghani, he is the independent, the free, the rich, if you like. And we are dependent on him. Think about when we were born. We couldn't lift our necks, we couldn't feed ourselves, we couldn't even wipe our own posterior. We were dependent on others. And all those things are ultimately dependent on the divine. Even our existence today. Our existence today, the fact that we breathe and we can eat and we can do so many things is because there is a system in place. There are other people that are contributing to the system. We are all connected in some amazing way. And all of these things are ultimately connected to and dependent on the divine from that point of view because he maintains and sustains them. So we must truly understand that not only must we have ultimate gratitude towards the divine because he gives us something that is priceless, that's free, that we don't necessarily earn, own, or deserve, but also we must understand that we are ultimately dependent on him because everything depends on him, including me and you. The third point. Allah is worthy of worship because he...
All right. Point number 2.
Yeah. So, this is in a way the same point that Milk was mentioning, right? That whatever we have been, whatever he has bestowed upon us, whatever we have, we don't deserve any of it, but yet God gave us all of that. And therefore, therefore he deserves our worship. And again, once again, I think in this entire video, Hamza is going to equate praise with worship, because all of this might deserve his praise. Let's say if he had only given us good things, but what is worship? Once again, the question arises. So that I don't think he answers that question. So now, the point that he's raising, that whatever Allah has bestowed upon us, that because of that fact, he deserves praise. You see, the problem with that is whatever we get in this life, it is a part of a test that we have to go through, and we are going through that test effectively without any choice. We were not asked to be created as humans, to be to go through, to be to be sent to this earth for this test. And if we are in this world, whatever God has given us, whatever in this life, it is nothing but a test. Even in Quran, it says, according to Quran, I don't remember the exact verse, I think the gist of it is that some we test in this world, some are tested we test some by giving them things, by bestowing blessings upon them, and by some and some we test by not giving them. So for example, he tests the rich by giving them a lot of wealth, and he tests the poor by not giving them wealth. So both of them have their own tests. So anything that we have in this life, I cannot consider it a blessing. It is a test. So don't tell me it's a blessing. It is a test.
Sorry.
So that is a very important point
Yes,
that I think that we should note. It doesn't matter what we have in this life, given the Islamic model or the Abrahamic model, probably because it's also in Christianity and probably in Judaism as well. Whatever we get in this life is nothing but a part of part of test. So it doesn't it is not directly beneficial to us unless we are somehow able to achieve paradise with it. It is not inherently good or bad. Nothing that we get in this life is good or bad. It is just a test. It is just a part of test, and we have to go through this. You can say that paradise is essentially good, but that is different. That is not what Hamza is talking about right now.
all right, Madan. I, I was just wondering, Kali, isn't there, isn't in one of those theologies, even either in Islamic theology or in Christian theology, a thing where it is said that God asked each one of us before being born that would you like to be born into this world?
Yeah, I know it's in Islam
There
and
is
it's in
something I
Quran.
remember
It's
having
in,
read about
yeah,
this somewhere.
yeah, it's in the Quran. It's in the
It's
Quran.
in the Quran,
But
right? It's in the
but you
Quran,
see,
right?
it's just a claim. I don't know about it,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I'm just saying that somebody can
That is a
raise
very
an
big claim
objection
that
to
they
that
make.
point.
So it
Yeah,
doesn't matter because
that's a
I
big
don't
claim.
remember
Yeah,
it.
I totally agree that
So
point.
it
Yeah.
doesn't matter whether Muslims claim that no, you were asked about it. What do you mean? If and again, the verse is problematic. I raised this problem in another stream somewhere else, what I was talking about. I think it was a Desi Neo stream. I mentioned this verse, and it is a problematic verse. I don't think I need to go through that, but there are problems with that verse. Just briefly, if I mention it, if we knew the kind of test we were going through, we are going to be put to, and we knew, I mean, if we had sufficient information, and yet we chose to be sent to this earth, then and I mean, if we knew that we were going to fail it, you know, then it was it wasn't a
Yeah,
valid
I mean,
question
I
for
see
us.
your point. I see
So
your point. If
yeah,
somebody is gonna be born as a Christian and or maybe a Hindu or something else, would they know that they I mean, how would you know what your test is basically? I mean,
exactly.
being
Did
born
we
as
know?
a different
So in other
faith in a
words,
different faith.
did
Yeah.
we know what kind of test exactly it was, and how capable we are? This is the minimum information that we needed to actually effectively and reasonably be able to decide whether we should select yes or no to this test. If we knew our capabilities and we knew the kind of test we are going to be put to, then we were going and we were giving rational faculties as well, then there was no way that we are going to choose wrong. And if any of these things were missing, then God did not give us sufficient information to make a proper decision for it. So it doesn't matter whether we were asked for it about it for not or not. It's just like giving a knife to a 5-year-old, and if he cuts himself, then you say, well, it's I didn't he asked me to give him a knife. Well, he's a 5-year-old. You're not supposed to give him a knife, right? You're supposed to make sensible decisions on your own and not give a 5-year-old a knife, because you know that he can harm himself with it. So you don't give that sort of decision to a person who is not capable of making sensible decisions. So that is what we
Exactly.
don't need to go into
Exactly.
detail into that first, but yeah,
Right.
that is
Right.
the kind
Right.
of
Yeah, I
information
think
that
we don't
we
need
need.
to go into detail into that.
Yeah. So Hamza here is also again using his subjective values, subjective morality, subjective understanding to say God is worthy of worship. He's assigning a value judgment to objective attributes, maybe of things that happen. Right? He gave you life. He gave you this. So he's using, again, this is the point, he's hypocritically and inconsistently, philosophically contradicting his argument against atheists, in which he says that we can't assess these objective behaviors and draw a ought from an is, or say this is good or this is bad. We can't say this is evil. We can't look at, like, let's say a knife cutting the neck of a baby and say this is evil, this is bad, this is unworthy. You get it? They're very similar. Yet here now he's saying that if God gives you a child, if God gives you life, if God grants you all these, bestows you with all these things, you can now use your human cognitive brain and make a value statement, make a value judgment of this behavior. Why? So either you can or you can't. If you're a human who can't do this, because your values are subjective and they're not mind independently true. How do you say it's mind independently true now when a baby is born that this event is such a good thing that this being who created this baby is worthy of praise? You see the problem there. So that is the issue, and it is a problem on David Hume's argument as well. You ought to worship, or this is because this event was a child being born, that we ought to now, consider this to be good. This is or something that we should emulate. Like this, giving charity, giving things is a good thing. Well, we can't say that doing things like that, like giving charity, being good to other people, we ought to do this. So how is he getting this ought on here as well? So there's a problem. There's many issues here that Hamza is doing to contradict his entire stance on attacking subjective atheistic morality. He's using his subjective standards to assess God's standards. And this is what the philosopher J.L. Mackie highlighted as well, that ultimately, in order to assess God, you have to use your own values to assess God's values. You have to assess your own value. You have to use your own values to assess God's character, and so on.
Right.
This kind of neatly links into everything that Milk has said. If God is giving you all of these things, although Milk here says that yes, there's all this other stuff, but he should at least get a little bit of praise. Well, Milk, if you're correct, then that is not the classical Islamic stance. You can't think God is worthy of a little bit of praise and not worthy of praise for other things. You can't have this kind of mixed view where God is worthy because of the good things he creates, like rainbows and harmony and love and children and so on, and health, but then
not curseworthy of cancer.
Not praiseworthy of all these other stuff like earthquakes and suffering and wars and genocide or disabilities or natural disasters, all of these things. You can't have that view. So if you're correct, Milk, then you have already moved away from the classical Islamic standpoint. That's the issue. At any rate, that's not how we kind of evaluate things. I actually submit Milk's understanding here is more precise and more accurate, and that would be the case. If an alien came in this life and he did some good things and did some crummy things, I would say he's a being who does some good things and does some crummy things. And he should be acknowledged that way as well. He might be a recipient of selective praise, selective for certain attributes, certain behaviors, targeted at certain behaviors and not targeted to others, where we hold him to blame. And that's how you evaluate most people, right? For example, I don't think Jeffrey Dahmer was evil per se in everything that he's done. Maybe before he ended up becoming a psychopath, he was a nice person who did some acts of charity, did some work, and he might have been commended for that. But then he did some pretty horrific things, and he should be not commended for that. He should be condemned for that. And that seems to be more of an accurate sort of bench way of going about things. But at the same time, if there's like a person, let's say Adolf Hitler, who's committed genocides, right? But he's also nice to his family. He's also nice to his German citizens. He's also nice to the people on his side. He's also nice. We still think of him to be overall a complicatedly evil person. We acknowledge, at least as a philosopher, I acknowledge that human beings are myriad and a mixture of many things. They're not just entirely evil. Even Adolf Hitler is subject to that. Adolf Hitler may have wanted to ethnically cleanse and kill everyone he disliked, but he had his in-group that he liked. But we still say generally that he was a pretty troubled, evil character, perpetrated many sinister wrongs. Well, according to what Hamza said, and according to what Milk is saying, Indeed, the fact that he has some praiseworthy things might get overshadowed, like in the case of Adolf Hitler, might get overshadowed by the evil things or the blameworthy things that he's done. And if Milk and anybody who's listening thinking that wait, we can't hold God to account for things like blameworthy things. Why not? Because I'm using the same standards that Hamza is using to hold God praiseworthy. Yeah, he's looking at good things. He's saying this is good. Look, he gave me life. This is worthy of praise. Well, okay, if giving you life is worthy of praise, then is allowing rape to occur, or earthquake, killing people and taking life, unworthy of praise?
Yeah.
That's the mirror reflection, right? That is the mirror argument. And then if you want to weasel your way out of those by saying whatever excuses you deploy for that, apply those same excuses for the good things.
You gotta be even-handed in considering all those things.
Yes. Yeah, because if you say God is mysterious, then you have to bite the bullet and accept that you might have a evil God who mysteriously acts good, but is actually doing it for a greater evil overall. And that will, if you bite that bullet,
also, Mahadan,
you've left the faith.
sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, and also one more thing someone can say, that just giving life is so much greater than any of the turmoils that you may face, and still needs worship.
Yeah.
Then you can, from the same token, you can ask those kids who are born with, defects, birth defects, and all those things. And then you have to again ask the same question for them as well, right? Because is it really worthy of worship, giving those kind of lives to children? Again, the
Right.
same problem.
And this is indeed, I mean, this in fact, Hamza also said it, but he just served by that point. He does mention that, and I've often heard people saying, particularly Muslims, that even just life on its own is a blessing, and it no matter whether we get anything else or not. No, it is not. We have clear logical, I mean, it can be, it is very easy to think that if a person is in continuous pain, he would rather stop existing if he knows that that pain is not going to stop. And for example, said, let's say and
Exactly, yeah.
that is also mentioned in Quran. That is, so if you say that existence in itself is a blessing, then you are lying. Why? Or you're wrong. Why? Because even Quran says that people in hell will say that please end us. Why? Because they have been through so much pain, and they know that this is going to be continuous pain, or brutal punishment for them. So they say that just end us. We don't want to exist anymore. But God would say, no, you're going to continue to bear with this pain and punishment. So you claiming, or anyone claiming, that an existence in itself is any sort of blessing, no, it is not. Unless you associate a positive, something positive with it, a positive experience
life
to it.
basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If there is no positive experience in an existence, then you cannot say that existence, or bestowing someone with that sort of existence, is in any way a blessing. It's not.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it's not. I mean, we don't even have to prove it. You know that it is not.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to reinforce again, if somebody says, like deploys like almost like a moral theory that any sort of existence is a blessing, that is almost translatable and tantamount to saying any sort of existence is a good thing, right? That's like a moral theory. It's like a utilitarian, almost like the utilitarian theory would say, maximizing the good, minimizing pain is the way to go about it. This is another theory saying that any sort of existence is good. And what they've done here is they've shown, again, that it's inescapable that we as humans have to first come out with a criteria and then use that criteria to figure out something is good or bad. And therefore you cannot escape yourself or run away from making these subjective considerations, right? So whereas a lot of these theistic philosophers condemn atheists for using subjective tools, the human psychology, your feelings, your understanding of like John Locke's arguments or John Stuart Mill's utilitarian argument on Kant's deontological principle, they've got their own principles. they have to start with a set of equations. What's the equation here? The equation is that it's a principle that they accept, which is that any sort of existence, life in itself is a good thing. Yeah, and they just state that. Like, yeah, why is that true any more than the utilitarian principle is true? Why is that? I'm trying to reinforce the human mind is the first mediator to assess these things before judging God's morality, before judging God's actions. Otherwise, you don't have a criteria. So otherwise, what I'm trying to show, that everybody has a criteria, yeah, and you subjectively think your criteria is correct. So you've not escaped the claim that you make against atheists, that atheists have a subjective morality. You're using your subjective morality to assess God. But anyway, in the specific thing that any life is good will mean that if there's 100 people, 1 million people on Earth, and everyone is in total maximal torture, burning in maybe reminiscent of the hellfire, then that's a good thing.
Even that is a good thing.
Yeah,
even that is something that you would say. You would say
Yeah,
that even if God would have been the kind of entity who would create humans or any other sort of sentient beings and keep them in eternal pain, you would still say that even such a God deserves to be praised, which is I don't know
I
what
think
can be more
somebody might respond to that with, okay, let's say this is a limited life, and then 1 million or 10 or billion people burning, torturing for millions of years, still are going to go to heaven, and they're going to live, eternal blissful life for eternity, right? That's still a good thing. Somebody might just argue with that, but then again, it defies the whole kind of logic, right? In
it's
a
just
sense that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the example me and Kylie is picking out is only to show that is that statement true, that
Yeah,
as long
no,
as
I
life is
agree.
good,
I
yeah.
agree. That's
And I think of a
It's
counterexample. Its counterexample is if there were beings who were just eternally tortured for no reason, and that's it. That's the only condition of this universe. It's not that they die, the torture finish, and then they go somewhere else. If they're just eternally tortured, that would be tantamount to a good life, or something like that.
Yeah.
Here, life, our language
about
breaks.
something.
What do we mean by
Yeah,
good?
Philo is talking about something different. Yeah.
Yeah. What do we mean by good, and what it seems as though when you go deeper into it, that when we start defining goodness and badness in respect to morality and ethics, it will have to do with something more robust, because the idea that this thought experiment demonstrates is that if you have eternal suffering forever, we don't consider that to be good. Maybe because pain and suffering is intrinsically bad. Maybe that's the reason. I'm not saying that is the reason. I need to sneeze, by the way, but I can't sneeze. That is such pain right now. Do you know when you need to sneeze, but you just can't sneeze?
Yeah.
This is eternal suffering right now.
right.
But maybe pain is intrinsically bad. That's one theory of morality. I'm not saying that is true, but there's a certain plausibility behind it. The concept of pain supersedes on, or is intrinsically connected to, or comes together with badness. So when we say something is bad, we usually associate with pain or some sort of suffering. Maybe that's just like analytical truth.
It's definitional. Maybe just definitionally true. Because
analytical truth. That's a tautology.
Pain is something that we want to avoid. That is what we know. We know it as a fact. At least I know that I want to avoid any sort of pain or suffering to me. And so,
somebody could say that somebody else's pain could be my enjoyment, and therefore pain is not always something that we want to avoid. But that kind of misses the point. Somebody else's pain is your pleasure, right? And it's still definitionally true, right? That pleasure is something that you find good, right? But somebody else's pain is something that they find bad, and you can recognize that even as a psychopath, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that somebody else's pain is bad, right? So even if the psychopath takes great gratification, what's happening there is that he's still obeying the dictate, these definitions. He's still obeying them, in the sense that when he looks at maybe the kid who is suffering from starvation and he's enjoying it, he's finding pleasure out of it and goes, oh, but this is. But here's an example of pain being actually good because it's good for me. No, pain is still bad, and pain is still
for a masochist. Even for a
Sorry?
masochist, actually, for a masochist, I mean, we think that he's maybe causing pain to himself, but what should be happening is, since he wants that to happen, wants that to be happening to himself, it means that he has some sort of pleasure because pleasure means something that you want to do, something that you really enjoy. So if he doesn't enjoy it, why would he go through it, or why would he want to go through something like that? So we might be it might be something that, to us, if we inflicted upon ourselves, we would feel pain. But for a masochist, I think he doesn't feel pain when he does something similar.
I think his pleasure overpowers the pain, basically.
Yes,
that's what
that's borne out by studies as well. That's borne out by studies as well. Neurological studies show that they get greater enjoyment out of it, the exhilaration.
Yeah, right.
So in that situation, that pain doesn't qualify as real pain, So because
because we are not talking about that. This is not what we are talking about. True pain and suffering, something that we humans don't want to go through. That is what we are talking about. No matter what it is, even if someone likes to be stabbed, then fine, that is not his pain or stuff. That is not what causes him suffering. I'm just talking, just a hypothetical situation. But whatever it is that causes him pain, well, we are talking about that. If God makes people go through that eternally, and that is what he does, the question that we are right now considering is, if just existence is good, or is just existence is a blessing, then even in a scenario where God causes infinite and eternal suffering and pain to his creation, even such a God deserves to be praised, because he has bestowed existence upon those people, and therefore they should worship him, which is
that is under the hypothesis.
Obviously ridiculous.
Under the hypothesis that existence trumps everything, pretty much. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, this is we are under the we are taking that, we are discussing that a possibility. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and if anybody listening to this thought experiment thinks when you define pain as bad and pleasure as good or something like that, this is subjective. Again, atheists using their subjective morality to make things up. Then didn't Hamza or you just use your subjective morality to say that life existing is intrinsically good? Whether it's suffering or not.
But pain and suffering is without subjectivity. Pain and suffering means nothing. What is pain and suffering? Pain and suffering is a subjective experience.
Exactly.
So that is what it is. It is, right? Without subjective experience, we can pain and suffering does not exist. It is nothing.
Well, yes, yeah. I don't want to go too deeply into that right now, but you're right. That's right in a sense, but some people might dispute that although you recognize psychologically through your subjective states what pain is, to think pain is bad is also a mind-independent fact, in the sense that where pain comes, badness also exists, right? And it's mind independent in the sense that it's mind dependent to experience it, but it's a fact, analytical fact, that is mind independent. The reason pain is bad is not because we subjectively make it up that pain is bad.
Okay. We're talking about. So for that, we could say that we could definitionally say that pain is equal to bad. When we say bad, we mean something that causes pain and suffering. So again, right? I mean, to that we could.
In this context, yes. In this context, because I mean, it's not in every single context when we say something is bad is pain and suffering, but all those are closely related to it. Like you might say something like that. Painting is bad, but there is some regard or close association with somebody's psychological state being disturbed or dissatisfied, and that might be called some sort of casual pain. Maybe somebody feels pained at the sight of this horrible painting. So it still links back to somebody's psychology. But what I'm trying to say is this realization that pain is bad obviously has to be experienced subjectively, right? And that might be a counter argument against everything that I'm saying, that because it's experienced subjectively, it just exists in the mind, and it's not mind independently true. By the way, this is a sketch of a view. This is not really something that I have a strong affinity to. If I had to defend objective morality, I wouldn't do it this way. But for people who do defend this sort of argument that pain is bad, they actually make the argument that it's objectively bad, in the sense that even if nobody existed, we can understand, even though we access and learn this information, that pain is bad because we have a subjective reality, a subjective experience, right? Even if nobody existed, it would still be true that pain is bad. In the same sense, a bachelor who is unmarried, a square has four sides, right? So what these people would be saying that you need to have a subjective experience of pain to understand it, but that doesn't mean it's not an objective fact, because the mind also exists in the objective world, right? It's a weird way to think about it. I mean, obviously. So the subjective objective divide kind of dissolves away if you think about it. Everything that's in your brain right now is still in part of the objective world, right? Because Kylie's mind isn't part of a different world, is it? It's part of this universe, right? And if Kylie is feeling pain, then Kylie's pain is bad, and we can say that, right? And that's an objective fact in the sense that in this universe, where there is pain,
Charlie's feeling pain. I'm feeling pain.
Yeah, in this universe,
it is
therefore,
objectively true.
Yeah, it's objectively true that Kylie's pain is bad. So in that sense, it makes a bit more sense to say, therefore, if we closely associate pain with badness, and if pain objectively exists, in some sense, in the sense that I've described it here, because Kylie's brain exists, Kylie's nervous system exists, Kylie's suffering exists, Kylie's pain exists, and pain is, by the way, intrinsically bad. Therefore, badness exists in some form. That's one way to do it. That kind of gets around human, maybe, So it's not an argument that I necessarily attracted to, but it's an interesting one. Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah. So sorry, I maybe interrupted you. Where were you going with that? Probably have you lost that train of thought?
I was saying, If people think though that everything that I'm saying is too weak, and guess what? It might be, because I don't personally subscribe. If I want to defend objective morality, I wouldn't do it this way. I'd use stronger arguments. But let's say everything that I've said, pain is bad, happiness, non-pain or happiness, is good. That's just subjective. That's what the theists make as an argument against atheistic morality. You've just defined it this way. It's mind-dependent. It doesn't cross Hume's problem. But if the atheist comes out with a criteria, that's a criteria, pain is bad, happiness is good, and that is subjective, then when the Muslim says life in itself is good, intrinsically good, that's also a criteria that he is deployed using his own psychology, using his own subjective mind, and that's just as subjective. What's the difference between a utilitarian saying we should minimize pain because pain is bad, maximize pleasure because pleasure is good? What's the difference between him saying that and a Muslim saying life in itself is a good thing? They're both utterances by the human psychology using the human subjectivity, and they're both equally subjective.
Agree.
So they don't get this objective morality as an issue. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that all the arguments that they make against atheistic arguments are equally applicable to them. They're making a
can apply to them as well, right? Equally.
Yeah.
And I just want to add, maybe it's a repeat of a point that I've already mentioned, that the blessings or whatever we have, if we are to praise or worship God because he has bestowed some good upon us, then again, as the example that I gave in the when we were discussing the previous point, that we should be more thankful or more maybe we should worship humans, because even and they are maybe even more worthy of worship, because for them there is a cost involved whenever they are good towards someone, whenever they are helping someone. So maybe if that is a logic that you're giving me, then fine, I'm also going to worship humans. I'm also going to and I'm going to do that to a greater degree, because of the fact that they have to put in a lot of effort for for them to be good to me, for them to be benevolent to me. They have a cost to pay for that. For every good that a human does, they have a cost to pay. Whereas for God, there is no cost to pay. So maybe, okay, let's say I'll worship him by your logic, but I'll worship humans even more by that logic.
Yeah.
Humans
So
who have been.
all of these arguments that our guests are saying, therefore, kind of falsifies Islamic
Yeah,
theism, right?
exactly.
Because under that same logic, then if it demonstrates those ingredients, that criteria would lead to more grounds for worshipping a human being, more so as more worthier of worship than a god, then that defies the entire fundamentals of Islamic theism. That where there's none more worthy of worship than God. There's no comparisons. There's no contenders. There's no partners. Yet, if we elevate a human being above God, more worthy of
Right.
worship.
You should, the whole of Africa should be worshipping Warren Buffett and what's his name, Bill Gates and all those. They have spent like so much resources on those. But anyways, I'm getting. If shall we are you done with your point, Mahadan, or shall we move ahead and
Yeah, you can
ask
move on.
Abdul or Milk to come, and
We
maybe
can
they
ask
have
them.
so many comments.
Yeah, let's ask them. So if you guys want to come up, please do come up. I think Philo, you can share the stream your link with them, and
Right.
let's
I
do
think
that.
we'll stop here to cover only 2 points as of now, and if none of them show up, then probably we'll move forward and cover point number 3, argument number 3 and 4, or something like that.
Abdul has written
Up to
quite
you
a bit.
guys.
Abdul has written quite a bit here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That if he comes up, then maybe he can clarify all those points, maybe, and instead of us going through point by point, or maybe we already covered some of his points, probably. So Abdul or Milk, if you guys are listening,
Yeah, please, Philo, continue.
Abdul or Milk, if you're listening to the stream still.
Let me say something, Abdul, if you're listening. I covered that in one of my first points right at the beginning. I think the first time I spoke, the first kind of lecture I gave, I mentioned that it will if it's going to be something to do with an attribute, it'll have to be with certain attributes that we recognize are as worthy of worship. If you notice, you've mentioned omnibenevolence being one of them. Why is it omnibenevolence? You've used your subjective standards to recognize, using your subjective mind, that malevolence is not worthy of worship, but benevolence is. First of all, that's the first error. And I'm just trying to demonstrate to you that you can't escape using your own values to assess things. And therefore, you're in the same issue with what people like Hamza say that atheists are in, which is you can't use value. Atheists can't make value judgments. Humans, well, you have to use your own value judgments to assess God, and this is what you're doing here. You're saying benevolence is worthy of worship. You just made that up. That's the issue, right? Is this a new comment that
he even used the word traditional?
Let me just
traditionally.
Abdul, if you're not saying that, I have shared the StreamYard link. Why not you come up, join, and then clarify your point? That'll be the best thing to do, right?
We are a friendly bunch. We're a friendly bunch. I don't think so. You won't have a problem with in talking with us.
I think we are
going to have a good discussion.
Right. So Abdul, there is a StreamYard link just probably above your comment, and so if you want, please do join. And yeah, I think we can have a very cordial discussion, not raising our voices. I don't think none of us raises voice at any time, and we listen to our interlocutors pretty. What do you call? We give them time basically and listen to them properly. So otherwise, Madin, carry on with your.
So basically, what I'm just summarizing what Abdul is saying. He's written quite a bit here. So he's using the phrase "worthy of worship" and he's linking it to these
Sorry,
qualities.
Madan. Philo, meanwhile, while Mahadan is talking about it, you can also one by one put his comments up so that people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, one by one from the beginning. So, do you want me to in chronology talk about it then? So he's here saying, let R1 represent the region of concepts or entities that are deemed worthy of worship. Fine. You want to go to the next one? So worthy of worship may encompass divine qualities such as omnipotence, omniscience, benevolence, and other attributes traditionally associated. Here's the first problem. Why? You made a criteria that this is worthy of worship, and he linked it to this. Why? Where did this come from? Where's the justification for this? This is what theists hold atheists to account. When an atheist starts off with saying goodness is associated with happiness, pain is bad. Let's start from there.
Right.
Why is this an axiom? What makes this
That's
a true
a
axiom?
subjective axiom. Yeah.
It's a subjective axiom. So what are you doing? Show me
clear.
an objective. Why is it objectively
true?
Show me. Yeah. Let me just say this to Abdul. Why is this objectively true? Why is it objectively true that this is worthy of worship? This is not just a problem for you, Abdul. It's a problem for the nihilist. If there was a true nihilist here, he would say the same thing to you. He'll say, "I'm a nihilist. I don't believe
Abdul
in."
is here.
All right. I don't
Abdul is
believe in objective values. So why is anything worthy of worship? So, sorry, Abdul, if you're here, then we can just talk to you directly rather than
Right.
to you.
Abdul.
Hi,
First of
Abdul.
all, thanks for dropping
Welcome
by.
aboard.
You're very welcome. Yeah. How are you doing?
Good.
All right. Great to have you here. And sorry if we misrepresented you at any point. But Mahadin was making a very good point. Worthy of worship is something that is very subjective, right? Why is that? Why? That's the question that Mahadin is raising, right? And all of us are raising basically the same point. Isn't that subjective, basically?
No, I don't think so. Also, hi, Martin. You
How are you doing?
good? Yeah, I don't have much time, but briefly, what I was trying to say is that I think,
Abdul,
yeah,
I think I know you.
yeah, you do know me.
You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. I knew it was you. Did I say this? Didn't I say this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you said it. You
I did.
mentioned it.
You've been what? This is. Do you know who this is?
Okay,
Philo.
I think I know who this is.
The best physicist in the world. Asshole.
Oh man.
Go away. Get off my screen.
Ooh. Is
Should
this the same Abdul?
should we
Is
be
this the
so-
same Abdul?
Should we be so abusive towards our callers? And
Yeah, I was told that I wouldn't be abused or.
no. I'm totally against it. I'm so very sorry.
He's my friend. He's a good friend of mine. I see him all the time.
Okay.
He's an idiot. He's an asshole.
Okay. I don't think we want to fend off our, scare off our callers, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Everybody who's listening to this, this is locker room humor. He's my friend. He's just playing a prank or something. He's not even a
Oh.
theist.
yeah. But,
Is this the same Abdul I know as well?
Yeah. It is the same Abdul that you know.
All right.
I knew.
All right. He's okay. Good to have you here, man.
good.
Awesome. It's an awesome surprise to have you here.
Yeah, I saw this pop up, and I was curious to see what you guys were talking about. And I think personally, I think it's all like this. The whole concept of worthy of worship is indefensible.
Yeah.
Like I've never
Right.
seen like an argument that's tried to convince me of it. So I've been just thinking of like trying to come out, like think of ways in which a theist might defend it, and then just like blurting it out and seeing what you guys say. I think so what I was trying to do was like think of it really logically, right? And I think one way maybe that you can get around it is by saying, if you believe that it is at all possible to define worthy of worship as a logically consistent position, if you can give any such definition of worthy of worship that's logically consistent, so as in it's possible to give it such a definition and it's not impossible to give one definition, then that definition should overlap with, and you believe it's logically possible to give a definition for a being who's worthy of worship, then by necessity, that definition should be consistent with a being, with a necessary being, if you believe in that. So I think that's all I was trying to say. But I haven't thought too much about it. It was just more like I was thinking about it in like 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, that seems reasonable. But yeah,
Okay.
I don't know how else to defend it. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
No, I agree with you then. I think I don't understand. I agree with you now that I know what you're saying, because I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Because I know you idiot. But
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a bit cheeky, but it kind of becomes axiomatic. Like it comes as a part and parcel of a being, of a necessary being, right? So I feel like unless you're willing to argue that no being is worthy of worship, I think you can't get out of that. But I don't know. I don't think that's how I don't think that's how Hamza argues his case.
I mean, part of a necessary being. I think I know what you mean, but I'm not sure why would part of a necessary being. I know the presumption is that it will possess or set of attributes that are worthy of worship. Is that what you mean?
I
What I'm
don't
trying to say,
think that's what Abdul is saying. I think he says that if we could somehow, provide or prove that something is worthy of worship, or objectively, I don't know, maybe this is what I understood from what he's saying.
Yeah.
Then yeah. So of course, if you could somehow, and I think I mentioned that earlier in the stream as well, if you could somehow prove that or give us a set of criteria that makes sense somehow, that this is the criteria upon which we judge whether something is worthy of worship or not, and it somehow makes objective sense that this is an objective criteria against which we can judge the worthiness of a being, of it being worthy of worship or not, then fine, then we'll agree that okay, this is worthy, this is how we'll judge it, and if something passes that criteria, something is according to that criteria, it will be worthy of worship. But I think you'll have to demonstrate that something of that sort, or someone can actually give us that sort of criteria. I don't think so, because it also has an innate is-ought problem in it, right?
Yeah, so that's why I explicitly said, like, when I was going through this reasoning, I think there's a distinction to be made. Like, I think you can define a being that's worthy of worship. I don't know if that necessarily means it ought to be worshipped. And so you're kind of right. What I was trying to say is I don't need to give a definition. What I'm saying, take set of all possible definitions that you can have of worthy of being worshipped.
So you're taking it on an axiomatic basis, basically. Worthy of worship is an axiom to it, basically. It's is it so?
I mean, I think the way I'm wording it, no, but essentially, yes, right? So what I'm saying is take set of all possible definitions of worthy of worship, right? And then take take a set of definition for necessary God, like which in actuality will just be one definition, right? And if there was a union of these two sets, then you're going to have some elements of the set of definition of worthy of worship that overlap with the region that I called R2, which is consistent with the definition of a necessary being. But so yeah, it is axiomatic in that way.
So I mean, in simple words, maybe I'm wrong. I might have misunderstood you, but let's say if I say it in very simple words, I think what you're saying is a necessary being. If you could have a definition of of what is worthy of worship, and if the necessary being does fulfill that definition, then that necessary being would be considered worthy of worship. Is that correct?
Can I just come in? Yeah, almost. So what I'm saying is, actually, could you repeat that? Because I think you laid it out really well, better than I did. So could you just repeat that? And I might stop you in the middle.
Sure. So what I'm saying is, if you could define what is worthy of worship, and
Yep.
then if you based on that definition, you'd see that okay, the necessary being does fulfill that definition, does pass that test of or criteria of being worthy of worship, then you would accept that necessary being as worthy of worship, as an entity who's worthy
So
of
I don't
worship.
make the second jump. So my first, basically, I'm just doing the first point. I'm saying that if you can have any definition of worthy of worship, there has to be at least one way of defining worthy of worship that's
Mm.
implied by and logically consistent with the definition of a necessary being, in a way that there's a supervenience relationship between the concept of worthy of worship and the necessary being, and yeah, its attributes. But yeah, I don't go and make the forward claim. I think you have to give more, just because that's just an axiomatic point, right? Like you can get that from set theory. But if you
Yeah,
want to, yeah,
it's pointless.
it is. Of course, I'm going to waste your time.
You're wasting my time and our time. Do you,
Yeah, I know. I should
How-
be working.
why?
Be
Why?
on the other side.
That's what I'm saying. This is why I'm not
No.
saying anything. You're wasting my time.
No, I'm just trying like to steelman this case. I don't know any other way you can actually argue for it. I agree with you. I think what all of you have been saying.
Yeah,
I don't think. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, even you, even what you are arguing for, it's
Yeah.
I mean, we the topic of our stream, we are not saying that God cannot be worthy of worship,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
since we are not arguing against it,
Yeah.
then I don't think your point would be relevant, right? What we are arguing for is, what we are doing is, we are discussing the arguments that Hamza Tzortzis is giving, or maybe
Yeah.
any Muslim is giving, as to why God is worthy of worship. We are evaluating
Yeah.
those arguments, and we are saying that no, these are the flaws in your argument. So
Yeah.
until
No.
and unless someone actually goes on and prove that okay,
Yeah.
this is why God is worthy of worship, then fine, we're going to accept it if they give us valid reasons for that.
Yeah. No,
And
I think
right now
that's
we're
fine.
not claiming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I agree. I agree with you. I don't think I don't think you can make a positive case for anything, like an objective case for why something is worthy of worship.
Right.
And I mean, for reasons that Mahadin already mentioned, because all of these things that you're defining as objective
One
have
of
subject. Yeah.
one of those reasons is that he maybe you're an idiot. I mean, that is what Mahadin said.
No,
But sorry,
Abdul,
I don't
Abdul,
know you that well. I just
yeah,
10 seconds.
Abdul, is it okay if I can like talk about a little bit about you to my friends here, my hosts here?
Sure, but I have to go. Like I have
Yeah,
to
so
work still.
But
But
Hey,
Abdul,
Abdul,
Abdul's actually opposite of an idiot. He's doing like a PhD in cosmology, physics, something like that. I forget.
PhD in
Should be
cosmology.
telling that.
He
PhD in
teaches,
cosmology he's doing, right?
Yeah.
and he's a lecturer at a university. So he's the opposite of an
Yeah, I
idiot.
Hey,
don't
But
Abdul,
compared to me, he's an idiot because obviously,
Abdul,
you
yeah.
can you hear me, Abdul?
Yes.
Okay, one thing we need to do is we need to have you here, and we're gonna do a review of KCA completely, just completely rip it apart.
I'm so over philosophy of religion, to be honest. But maybe, sure.
You can be, you can find 2 hours, right? Can you?
Sure.
Maybe.
Sure. I'm free probably after 26th of November.
All
Drop
right.
me a text. Or get Mother to drop me a text.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'd love to have you, and I think we, Madin and I spoke about this and said that we should have you for that stream whenever we do that. So when
Sure.
you're free,
I'll
probably
try.
will. All right, great.
Sure. It was lovely seeing you guys, and yeah, I really like what you guys are doing. I mean, I've only listened to a tiny bit, but I think it's very rigorous at times. So
All right, great to have you here. Yeah, just totally stumped. I had to ask Madin. Oh, okay, is that the same Abdul that I know?
I
Do
thought
That's
he
you know
was
crazy
what
doing
voice.
you commented? Even just by looking at your writing, did you hear me say it? I said, I think I
Yeah.
know this person. I think I know him, but I
I
dismissed.
remember. I remember you mentioned it, and
Yes.
I was thinking about how did you actually know? So you're saying you know
Yeah.
him by the way of his writing?
I think so. I don't know. He could have been any other Abdul, but then I just thought is it probably him? He might be listening to it, and I just thought I might know this guy, but then I thought there's so many Abduls in the world, it could just be any Abdul. And then he came on, and I was like, all right, finally we've got somebody. And given that you were giving like coherent sentences and arguments and mentioning logical consistent, and you trying to define things properly using bits of jargon, I thought, all right, finally we might have somebody who can talk about this in a nice way. And then you talked, and I realized that it's that goof that I talk to sometimes. You know, I was like, oh man, it's just him playing a prank. I thought it was a prank at first because I thought you were trying to pretend to be a theist. Did you get it?
I was trying to do a prank, and then I just I gave up. I started like thinking slightly seriously, and then Anyways, lovely seeing you guys. I'll catch you some other time. Bye bye.
Yeah, nice talking to you, Abdul.
All right,
nice
Abdul. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, jump in anytime you want in the future.
Sure. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.
I think Milk was also a good commenter. I mean, we appreciate his comment.
Milk had pretty good comments as well, and Abdul, of course, he put the hat right on.
I don't trust anybody anymore. He's probably my cousin or something. I don't know. You know? I don't trust anyone.
Now Martin is paranoid. Martin is paranoid now.
But it was good to talk to Abdul. It's been a time we have known him. I've known him for much longer than I think I have. All right, cool. He didn't want us to reveal his information, so we'll have to keep mum here. All right. Shall we move on with or shall we just end the stream right here? Maybe see if someone is willing
let's
to...
end it. I think it's already 2 hours and it's quite heavy.
Did Hamza have any more points? Did Hamza have any more points?
Yeah, he has 5 more
he
points. Remember, we still have to cover 5 more points, basically. So
5 more
maybe
points.
we'll cover.
Is there Kylie? Is there any like important point of the 5 that are necessarily something that we should?
I was actually going. I had his article open in front of me. So let me, if we just go through his, because over there he has numbered it. So his second point is God has created and also sustains everything. So that is the point that we have already covered. The third one is God provides us with innumerable favors. It's in a way similar to what he has already said in point number 2. So it's very relevant to that. We don't need to cover it separately, I believe. The fourth one is if we love ourselves, we must love God. So it's about a loving God. If a person loves for himself is necessary, it should be. So it's about loving God. I'll have to go through it, what it means, what he's talking about. So, and I think what he says in this particular point is, as far as I can remember, that God. So he says that God's love is selfless. It's because every other love is sort of
selfish.
It's selfish, yeah. But God's love is selfless, and I think that there are problems with that statement. So I think we can.
Maybe we can cover those points. Martin, what do you think? Shall we cover them, or shall we maybe leave them for part 2 or something like that? Maybe next
Can we
time
rush through them? Want to rush through them very quickly, or at least maybe pick?
Yeah, is that even possible? So the number 4 point is if we love ourselves, we must love God, and number 5th is God is the loving, and His love is the purest form of love. So it's the 5th one that I was recalling. That is the one. So he says that God is the loving, and His love is the purest form of love. Somehow, okay. Then the 6th point is worship is a part of who we are. Again, it's a very subjective argument. He says we innately worship. It's in us to worship. Whether we worship God, so I think he would go on to that. It's often said about atheists, right? That if you don't worship God, you're going to worship. You worship celebrities, you worship someone. So it's in us to worship, and therefore we should not. That actually God is the one who's worthy of our worship. It's a meaningless point. It's quite a
most of them are. So I don't think they are worth our scrutiny as much as these are really bad points. Yeah, there's no, God is the purest love. That's first of all defies.
We can cover that. Yeah. And the last one, just mentioning it, last one is obeying God is the most rational thing to do. Of course it is. Now he is again, the seventh point is obeying God, meaning that now he's saying that God, we should worship God just as an obedience, that's just as an act of obedience, because he requires it from us probably. So if he requires worship, then and we should do it because it's in our favor, because worship would help us somehow to get closer to him, and that is good for us.
I
So in
think
other
that's
words,
isn't that contradicting his first point that he doesn't
exactly.
require anything? Yeah.
Exactly. And what it also is that it's not then when you say then the statement God is worthy of worship is meaningless, because when you say God is worthy of worship, and if you're equating and for reason you're giving, well, obeying God is a rational thing to do because is good for us, then what you're saying is God is worthy of worship means that we should worship God because it's good for us. Are Do these two statements make any sense together?
They don't match up,
We should
right? They
worship.
don't
Now
match up.
it
Yeah.
doesn't, yeah, it doesn't make God worthy of worship. What we you can say is that, well, it makes sense to worship God because it is better for you, but why does it make God worthy of it? That's the answer. Question still
Yeah.
remains unanswered.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess these are the points. I think the loving part we can probably cover. So Mahadan, can you just go directly to that and let's see what he says about it? God's love is the purest form. I think that is.
Even on the video.
Yeah, in the
Shall
video. Let's
we?
listen to it.
Yeah, Philo,
Let's see.
you're in control.
You know, Kali,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know the timeline.
Yeah. Just give me a second. I think I can check it. Where is it? I think, yeah. It's God's heartbeat manifest worship. What is it? Okay. So it's 27 minutes. Go to 27:19.
27 minute, 27:09, right?
27 minutes, 19 seconds.
It's the most purest form of love. Why am I saying this? Well, think about this. What is the greatest manifestation of love in the world? The greatest manifestation of love in the world is really a mother's love. Don't get me wrong, some mothers can internalize this. We'll be in a state of spiritual.
Sorry, Kali, you said 27 or 47?
No, 20. I said 27 or 29. Sorry. Go back. It's 27:19. I think you were almost there.
27:19, right? Okay.
Purest form of love. It's the most purest form of love. Why am I saying this? Well, think about this. What is the greatest manifestation of love in the world? The greatest manifestation of love in the world is really a mother's love. Don't get me wrong, some mothers can be very evil. We've seen this. Human beings can be very bad and evil. We know this. But generally speaking, when we think about the greatest form of love, a sacrificial type of love, we're thinking about a mother's love. A mother's love can be the most greatest form of love that we experience. However, a mother's love is contingent, meaning it is limited from the point of view that it is dependent on her need to love. She loves because it completes her. She loves because she needs to love. And her love is not maximally perfect. She may love all of her 10 children in such an amazing way, but she may not love, for example, someone else's children. The point here is her love is limited in some way, it's flawed in some way, and it is contingent. It's not pure from the point of view because she needs to love, it completes her. However, with Allah, His love is the most purest form of love because He doesn't need to love. He is al-ghani, meaning the independent, the free, the rich. His love doesn't complete Him in any way, but yet He loves. He's nothing by loving, yet He loves. It's the most purest form of love because we know His love is to the highest degree possible without any deficiency and without any flaw. This is Allah. He doesn't need to love. It doesn't complete Him. He benefits nothing from loving, yet He loves. Imagine how pure that love is. Think about this, brothers and sisters and friends. Imagine someone comes into your room right now and they can be described as the most loving being that has ever walked on this planet. What's going to happen to your heart? Something's going to happen. You're going to be compelled to want to taste some of that love, embrace some of that love, know why that human being loves that way, experience some of that love. Well, likewise, or by greater reason rather, if God's love is the most purest form of love, then surely we should want to love the divine. And loving the divine is an act of worship. And how do we love the divine? Well, Allah tells us in the Quran in chapter 3, verse 31, and He speaks to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon whom be peace. He says, "Say, O Muhammad."
All right, that's about it,
Yeah.
right?
No, just complete. Let him complete the verse. Let's see what he's talking about, and then
Okay.
And say, if you love God, then follow me, so God will love you and forgive your sins. And God is forgiving and merciful. So Allah says this, say, and He's referring to the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. If you love Allah, if you love God, then follow me, meaning follow Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so God will love you and forgive your sins, and God is forgiving and merciful. So the point here is, God is worthy of our love because He is the loving, and His love is the most purest form of love. It's not dependent on anything. He gains nothing by loving, yet He loves, and His love is maximally perfect to the highest degree possible. So we should be compelled to want to.
All right.
So yeah, so he loves us when he does it. So it's the most arbitrary kind of love, right? Because he doesn't need to love us. He has no reason to love us. Why? So the question is, why does he love us? Does he, again, it's kind of Euthyphro's dilemma once again. We find Euthyphro's dilemma everywhere, I think, when we are responding to theists. And
I think Euthyphro's dilemma is like one it's a trump card, basically.
Exactly.
Just throw in anywhere, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the question is this: does God love us because there is any kind of reason or standard behind it? There is any external reason, or He loves us just because?
Arbitrarily.
I mean, it's just arbitrary attribute of God. One, I have mentioned that in my earlier streams as well. It is against the contingency argument, and if your God is such, then it is against the contingency argument, and then your God is not the necessary being. That is a big problem with this. If a God is loving, then He could conceivably be hating as well. He could have been a hating God. Well, according to you, He's not. Then if he's not, if he's a certain way, he has a specific characteristic as opposed to something else that he could have been, then he's not a necessary being. One, but that is a big problem with it. Secondly, as I said, that why does he love us? If he loves us for no reason, then it's an arbitrary act. He could have hated us. It's just a stroke of luck. Let's say if he does indeed love us, it's just a stroke of luck for us that he happens to love us and not hate us. God didn't cause this love. He just happens to love us. If you say that he actually chooses to love us, then why does he choose to love us? Does he choose to love us because of any reason, any rationale, any external standard that he follows? Then in that case, what is that? Then what is that external standard? Where does it come from? Or if there is no external reason, he chooses to love us for no external reason, for no rationale, then once again it's arbitrary. And why should we be praising something arbitrary? So these are the problems that I see.
And Khali, one more point that he made, and that's kind of goes against him as well, is he said something like that a mother loves her children, but that's conditional or contingent, not not like pure love of Allah or God, because mother doesn't love somebody else's children, right? So in that sense, what does Hamza mean here is that there is another God, that this God, if supposedly these are every human being is a child of a God, this one true God, then this analogy that he's trying to make doesn't fit in, basically, right? Because if he's saying that a mother loves his children, then same should be happening to God as well. He's trying to say here that God loves everybody, whether they be somebody else's children
Yeah.
or his own children, right?
Yeah.
That means that there is probably, maybe just thought experiment wise, there is another God whose children might be there as well. This God would love
No, no,
those
no.
children
I
as
don't.
well.
Uh,
No,
I mean, yeah, yeah.
I'm just
That's
throwing
a,
off his argument. Basically, I'm just throwing. He's not saying
but
that.
but
He's not saying that. But I'm just throwing off his, analogy over there. Basically,
but I think there's another problem which I thought of when I was listening to him, and then I forgot. You see, he said that a mother's love, despite it being the purest kind of love that we know or that we experience, it's not the perfect kind of love, because, and he gave an example that a mother would not love another's child. You see,
so are you
there's a
talking
there.
about 70 moms love?
No, no, no. I mean, no. I'm not going. I'm not going there.
I
What
think
I'm
there
saying is,
isn't there. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead,
yeah. What
please.
I'm saying is God's love even perfect? Because my question is this: why does God? Let's say God loves humans. Does God equally loves animals? Because if He does, then why don't they get a chance to go into heaven or hell? Why don't they go through this test, and they also are given this opportunity? Does God love some of his creation more than others? And why is that? Why do humans deserve more of God's love than animals or even angels? So you see, human is considered the epitome of God's creation.
But
And
did he
But
actually
that's
say?
in the Quran, by the way. That's in the Quran as well, right? So,
Did
I
he,
mean,
yes.
did he
somebody could
actually
argue that point.
Sorry.
did he
Yes.
did he actually say though that he thinks God's love is perfect?
He said God love is perfect. It's flawless. So there are problems with his love. We can
Yes,
easily
yes.
identify the problems with his love, because he doesn't love all of his creation equally. And and we it's clear that the reasons for loving one creation more than other is nothing but arbitrariness. He chose to love humans more than animals. He doesn't give animals the same opportunities that he gave humans. Did he? He clearly didn't. So then we could say, well, his love is flawed even. So I mean, that is a problem as well, because
I think regarding arbitrariness here, I mean Hamza would be saying something like that. God is a benevolent being, and a benevolent being therefore doesn't generate reasons for love arbitrarily. Rather, the benevolent being is will love
innately
innately.
innately benevolent.
What I would say is, a benevolent being will love unconditionally to some extent his children, and because that's what a benevolent being would do to some extent. He's not just a benevolent being; he's obviously a disciplined being, compassionate being. He's also a punisher, and so on. So, just like a human parent, if you're a loving person, you would love your children. But if you're also a disciplined parent, sorry, and that has to balance with lovingness. And if you're all loving and you're disciplined, part of your loving discipline would be sometimes to punish your children, so on. And similarly, in the case of God, I think Hamza here would be saying, he would be discounting the possibility that it's arbitrary, and saying that it's not God. I mean, I think you kind of capitalize on the fact that he said God doesn't need to do it, but he does it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's a bit of a weakness on his part, because if God is in fact has the attribute of benevolence, then God, a benevolent being needs to, it necessitates, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, in the way Hamza describes it, it's this language, this poor use of language, that God does not need to love you, but He does. It depends what he means by that. Does he mean that God didn't need to
So
create you, and therefore
yes.
God didn't love you? In which case, it's still consistent with a benevolent being. Because does a benevolent being need to necessarily create another person? No. And in that sense, God didn't need to love you either as a consequence. But if he means that even after he creates you, he didn't need to love you, then that contradicts the concept of benevolence. So that's why I think that exploited in your mind the possibility of euthyphro. And you're right in that sense, but he's wrong. Hamza would be wrong if he had to consistently adhere to all of his philosophy, because in his philosophy, God is a benevolent being, and therefore God necessarily must love. And therefore, where does this kind of, he didn't need to come in, right? And in fact, that kind of opens up another kind of worms, which is that if there is a being who necessarily has to love, is it the purest form of love? Right?
Exactly.
Maybe some forms of love are more pure in the sense, or better. There's a better expression of love when it's you don't have to love something and you do love, which is the point that he's making. Hamza's making. He's trying to make this
Exactly.
point. The strongest form of love
Exactly.
when you don't have to, but God has to, right?
It
He
has
doesn't have.
to. He's forced to. Yes, Philo, please.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So what I'm saying is, Philo, so there are two routes that he can take. One is that God chooses to love, and the other one is, and he chooses despite the fact that he doesn't need to love us. And the other route is that he is innately benevolent. He's a loving God by his very attribute, by his innate self, and therefore he needs to love us. He doesn't word it that way, but let's consider both of these possibilities. If he chooses to love us despite the fact that he doesn't need to love us, then the question is, why does he love us? And then the Euthyphros problem comes again, right? So that why does he choose to love us? Is it just an arbitrary choice, or is there something innate in him? Now, or innate in him, or is the rationale behind it? What is that rationale? Is it an external standard that he's following or not, or whatever? Now, if he's taking that other route where he's saying that no, where what you mentioned, that if he's a benevolent God, but and that is his attribute, then even then the problem arises, right? Why is he benevolent? Is it just because he happens to be benevolent and he could have been otherwise, right? So this is just a specific trait that he has then, right? He could have been otherwise, but he just happens to be this way. Then this very trait of God is arbitrary, I mean, because he could have he could have been a hating God. He could have been a malicious God who is not benevolent, who is the opposite of benevolent. And then once again, what I'm saying is that even if he is innately benevolent, even that innate trait that he has just happens to be the case, and we're just lucky that he's that way. He could have been otherwise, but just by stroke of luck, it happens to be the case that he's not. So even that, I'm saying that even that is in sense arbitrary.
Right. I mean, the attribute of benevolence could be an arbitrary attribute. Could
Yes,
be
yes.
anything.
He
Pretty
just
much.
happens to be that way. He doesn't
Yeah.
need to
Could
be.
be
It's
anything.
like,
Could be
yeah,
anything. Right.
he could have been any other way, but he just happens to be benevolent. So he
No,
could
I
have
think
been other way.
no. I don't think. I think if somebody bites the bullet on the ether for a dilemma and says that God is benevolent, they are moving away from arbitrariness in the sense that they're saying that God couldn't have been any other way. Only on the arbitrary model.
So
You could,
isn't that axiomatic? I mean, isn't
yeah,
you taking that as an axiom basically? And then how do you prove that axiom from some other axiom like God is malevolent basically instead of
yeah,
being benevolent basically?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
again, yeah, but that would be another route to take in this case. I mean, that is another
no, no,
possible way of
yeah. I
taking.
mean, you can talk about it in two different senses. In the sense of how do you recognize God is benevolent rather than malevolent? Whether that attribute is, well, how do we know that God has possesses the attribute of benevolence over malevolence? And then there's a question of ontologically, can God possess the attributes or characteristics of benevolence versus malevolence? And I think Hamza here is talking about the ontological. Hamza would be, if he expressed himself properly, talking about the ontological part, that in principle, God can just be benevolent. And if God is benevolent, then it's not arbitrary, right?
Right, right.
When Kylie says then it could have been any other thing, I think to give charity to Kylie's point, it makes more sense on the epistemological issue. In the how does a human know that this is what benevolence looks like versus malevolence, right? In other words, God just says whatever I do is benevolence, and He just calls that benevolence, right? And how do we distinguish benevolence from malevolence? That's the problem. That's the epistemological problem. How does a human know? Because here, God is saying that He knows alien language, and He knows the alien language to a great deal of sophistication. How do we know He knows the alien language though? When we don't know the alien language, right? That's one issue. But then there's the issue. The other issue is that God says, if God is benevolent, whatever that is, would it be arbitrary? No. Even if God was malevolent, would it be arbitrary? No. In that situation, we're talking ontologically. Ontologically, if there's a God and God possesses an attribute, and that attribute is whatever, it could be benevolence or malevolence, would that mean God is arbitrary? And it doesn't fit the definition of arbitrary, right? Because whatever characteristic has, it's not random. You see what I'm saying? But in the sense
Right,
that if
right.
you even if you fix, yeah, even if you fix
calling it.
malevolence, it won't be an arbitrary God. An arbitrary God would be whatever he holds, whatever combination of attributes he holds. He just says this is how it is, right? So or arbitrary means random.
Yeah.
Malevolence is not random, if you know what I mean.
What? No.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, so let me clarify what I'm saying.
Hmm.
When I say arbitrary or random, I am taking random in the very truest sense of random, which means that it is, so it could have been, so it's A or B, and
Hmm.
both could have happened. Well, just A actually happened, right? I would say that it is, and if A happened, and I can say, and if there is no particular reason why A happened, although B could also have happened, but A happened, then I would say that this is truly random. Would you agree with that? If
Yeah,
A
I
or
mean,
B both,
in respect to this, that randomness is very close to indeterminism, or sounds like that. In respect to personalities and
yeah,
characters.
in a way, yes. This is what I'm
Yeah, so
talking
we're
about.
not talking about causally random. It could very well be that God has a reason. It's just a random reason. So we're not talking about causally random in the sense that there's no
I
cause.
think what Khayali means is
Yeah.
he's talking about the existence of a random attribute in God, right? So,
Right.
are you
Yes.
saying a God could be malevolent God randomly,
Yes.
or a God could be a benevolent God randomly? So you're talking about the ontologies of those two existences, right? In a sense, is
Yeah,
that true?
What I'm saying.
if there's a situation where randomly God can switch from malevolence to benevolence, it might be closer to arbitrary, right?
Yes.
Even then, it's not right to say arbitrary. Usually, in the kind of Euthophra framework, we say arbitrary to mean that it is just consistent with his whims, whatever he generates, right?
No.
It's arbitrary in the sense that I arbitrarily make up what is right and wrong, right?
Right. So
Technically,
what do you mean by that?
moral
So,
theory. It's
for
like
example,
ego. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
For
We're
example,
not
you
talking.
could have said,
We're not talking about causal indeterminism, and we're not talking about the fact that I can be benevolent or benevolent. In the world where God is just randomly making things up, um, one way to think about it is we can presuppose that there is no moral theory. It's a nihilistic universe, and God just randomly make things up. In which case, nothing is malevolent, nothing is benevolent. It's just whatever God wills, right? That's one way to think about it. The other way to think about it is that it might be possible that there is a true objective moral theory, which is correct, which is the benevolent standard, let's say, and God is just an arbitrary, whimsical being who just behaves in how he wants, right? He may then sometimes align with benevolence randomly, maybe. Yeah, that's a possibility. I've not thought about the
so,
true deeply, but go on. What are you going to
so,
say?
so let me clarify. So what I could explain, how I could explain it is, so so there is God's attribute of benevolence or malevolence. Malevolence is a word, right?
Yeah, malevolence, right.
So, so there is the attribute of the malevolence or benevolence, and then there is the act, which you could categorize as benevolent act or a malevolent. Now, what I'm saying is, if God is arbitrary, if God's nature is arbitrary, then I would say then what the manifestation of that would be that his acts would be random or arbitrary in terms of the fact that whatever he does, it could be something that we categorize as malevolent, and sometimes he does something that we could categorize as benevolent, right? So that would be how I would categorize his actions. Now, when I'm talking about his attributes, I'm saying as his attribute, he's either benevolent or innately malevolent. He's either of the two, and he's that all the time. So he's innately just benevolent, let's say. Sorry. What I'm saying is he is benevolent. The question, so it relates in a way to the contingency argument. Why is he benevolent? Does he just happens to be that way? So there is no reason behind it, right? He just happens to be that way, and he could very well have been a malevolent god. So there is nothing special about him being benevolent. It just happens to be the case that he's been benevolent. Do you understand that?
Kind of. That's why where you may lose both of us. I'm not sure about Philo. I think that until that last part, where he just happens to. Do you mean in respect to the arguments, like in relation to the contingency argument?
What I'm saying is it's nothing special.
Kelly's point. Sorry.
It's
go ahead.
nothing. So when we say that he's benevolent, and he just happens, and what I'm saying is that he and we and I'm assuming that we know what a benevolent god would be like and what a malevolent god would be like.
Yes.
So we're assuming that already. So I'm saying that let's say he's a benevolent god. What I would say is that why is he a benevolent god? And as an attribute, he's benevolent just because he just happens to be that way. So for example, let me take an example of from our physics, right? So there is according to physics, the quantas, in the quantum field, there is a sort of randomness, right? A particle can be in one place or another, and it just happens, and there's a randomness in it as to where it actually would appear. You're aware of this, right? We don't know where it would appear, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So now let's say the particle appears in point. He could appear in point A, or at point B. He appears at point A. The particle appears at point A. Would you say that so he appeared, the particle appeared at point A? Well, it could very well have appeared at point B. So it's just a random thing. So that is how I'm saying that the god's attribute of benevolence is random, in terms of it could have been any other way, and there is nothing special. It could have been A, it could have been B. It just
I think that is where you'd probably lose a lot of people, in the sense that God is necessarily benevolent eternally, and there is no could have. It's not possible that it could have been in any other way. It wasn't that.
I think it is axiomatic that he is benevolent. Basically, that's what it is. That's what Mahadin is trying to say. And Kelly, your point, I think I see your point. But let's in this argument, I think Hamza is saying that God is benevolent in that axiomatic sense, pretty much. So I think we should discard any other kind of malevolence or any other kind of God.
I
mean, he's claiming that.
What Kylie is saying, it seems as though God is living in this kind of indeterministic universe or something, and his attribute is being generated from a random generator, and it just happened to generate this attribute of benevolence versus. That's the issue, isn't it? The theist would be saying that's not the case. That's not in a physical universe that where indeterminism is true and there's random generation, a true random generator, not fake randomness, true randomness. If it's inherently existent within in the roots of the universe, then yes, then you can have particles that has no causally determined reason why it generates one way versus the other. But that is not applicable in the God model, because God model it's not in an indeterministic generation of attributes. Those attributes were always eternally there as a first uncaused cause. That would be the argument, and that's the same thing as distinguishing between a deterministic, atheistic deterministic universe that is caused by physical events, one in which you have causal indeterminism being true, where events at some point, at some layer of reality, genuinely is acausally, non-causally produced through randomness, and then or another universe, and this is the debate, like which one is true, or which one are we inhabiting, or is it a mix of both, or another universe where everything is stringently deterministically defined, and there's cause all the way down to the bottom, to the first one, and there's no
That's hard
acausal.
determinism.
Yeah,
Hard
that's hard
determinism, right?
determinism. And since
Right.
atheists can accept both, saying that it's logically possible that it could be indeterminism, maybe it's logically possible it could be hard determinism, strict determinism. We can also accept a model of God where it's logically possible that he's strictly determined by his attributes, and there's no first cause that causes those attributes, and therefore there was always there. You see what I'm saying? It's not random in that sense. If it was true that God is being produced from randomness, then he wouldn't even be God, I would say.
No,
It
no,
has to be a
no.
word.
I guess actually, I mean, I just gave it as an example. I think we can move on, but I will, maybe we can. We can
I
talk
think we can
about it.
talk about this
Yeah,
point later on, maybe
yeah,
out
later
of
on.
this
But yeah,
stream.
because
Yeah.
but exactly, I mean, this is not what I'm saying, because at the end, what you just said, I'm not saying God generated from it. We're going to talk about it later on. But yeah,
Right. Well, we'll talk
let's
about it.
talk about it
Can I
in
just say
detail.
one more, not regarding this, something completely different, because I want to talk
Yeah.
about Hamza's point. Yeah, when Hamza says, a few things that Hamza is wrong to say God had a choice to love or not love. If God is necessarily, benevolent, then God has no choice, but he has to love. He's a created being. He said God's love is the purest or the best or the maximal or the perfect version of love, and so on. And obviously, you addressed that, saying that it's not perfect. He might be arguing that it is perfect, and we just don't know, mysterious reasons, or God is wiser than us, and he knows why he doesn't like animals that much. These are all begs the question of where's the evidence, right? It's all possible to churn out these reasons, but we don't. If those reasons are not available to us, it's equally possible that God doesn't have a reason, and therefore, and furthermore, that's the best that we have to look at. We look at a crime scene. If Jeffrey Dahmer goes and chops somebody's head off, and he says he loves this person though, and all the evidence suggests he doesn't, well, anybody could say we might not know the reasons Jeffrey Dahmer has for chopping his head off. Well, at this moment in this court case, we've looked at all the reasons, and there's no sufficiently good extenuating circumstance to show, in fact, he actually loves this person that he killed, and he killed him for a good reason, a justified reason. If we can't see those justified reasons right now, then that is the best evidence that we have to determine whether Jeffrey Dahmer was a loving person or not. And he
You're
wasn't.
fascinated by Jeffrey Dahmer, man.
Yeah,
Bring in,
I'm just
bring in Zodiac. Bring in Zodiac now.
making it very clear to people, through human examples. Maybe he's just playing on my mind today because I used him once and I'm going to use him again. That's all. But
You're right. You're right that we can, at least from what we know, we cannot conclude that he is the most perfectly loving being. It's not obvious to us.
Yeah.
If we
And if it was,
claim that he has
yeah.
he might have some reasons as to why is all of these bad things are happening. Well, as you mentioned, he might not have them. This is also a
Yes.
possibility. So
Yeah,
we don't have any reason to believe that it's
but
perfectly
because
loving.
the skeptical theism argument is that you can't look at, using our limited senses, unrepresentative samples of evidence that might not capture the entire picture, the totality of evidence, which we don't have grasp of because we have limited minds, and God has the full picture, and he may see why he had to allow the suffering of animals, the gratuitous suffering of animals, which, if we had the full knowledge, we would know, in fact, this gratuitous suffering, seeming gratuitous suffering, is actually justified. And this is exactly what a benevolent, compassionate being would do, or a being with those attributes would do. The problem with this is it completely took nuclear bombs Hamza's entire thesis, including the entirety of this lecture, which is predicated on looking at things using his senses, right? He is relying on the exact same senses to look at all these good things, like mother's love or children being born or God giving you these things, and he's also he's also adjudicating God to be a good being, and pretty much overruling or not considering the possibility is evil. But if I can't, because of my limited intelligence, I can't judge all this suffering and conclude this is more evincing of an evil being, then he can't look at all this goodness and make a conclusion that this is evincing of a good being. So his entire he has to be neutral. So you can't deploy the skeptical theism or mysterious God card selectively, right? His argument nuclear bombs his entire case to the extent that he has to look at both seeming moral behavior or goodness and seeming immoral behavior like rapists or genocides or tornadoes that kill people, suffering, and just be neutral about it and not comment either way. He shouldn't say God is worthy of worship or not. He shouldn't say this is exemplifying God's love on anything. You can't make these adjudications from your limited intelligence. You see what I'm saying? So trying to have his cake and eat it too.
You pick the good, you pick the bad as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the final thing I'd say is when Hamza says, God, this is the purest form of love, and God doesn't. Even a mother loves because she wants something, right? God is not doing it because this is nonsensical, right? That God is not doing it because he wants something. Of course he wants something, right? God is a mind. God has a desire that he has his minions that he's created worship him. He has a desire for obedience. He has a desire that people perform good acts that he deems as good. He gives
there
charity.
Won't be any creation if there weren't a desire, Mahadan.
Exactly.
So if somebody says that he doesn't have a desire, then there won't be any creation. So that point refutes itself pretty much.
Exactly. He wants certain things. He has certain needs. These might not be needs in the sense that he's dependent upon something. So let's not confuse that. Let's not confuse that God has a need with God is dependent upon something. He might not be. It may be the case that God isn't dependent upon human beings in order to become better or something like that. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have a need, right? The need meaning he has an interest, a desire that he wants to fulfill. And what that desire that he wants to fulfill is that he wants human beings to obey his dictates and so on and so forth, and everything in the holy books, everything in the religion. That is his manifestation of his desires. So clearly, God also wants something and you can make that comparison with the mother. The mother unconditionally loves her children, but that's because she wants something. She wants her children's survival, and she would probably kill herself to help her children or something like that. God also has love for a select few of his children, of his creation, and he can't kill himself, obviously, but he does things like sends messengers and so on. He's doing it, and that fulfills at least a part of his need, interest, or desire. So it's very similar, although not the same, to a mother or a father. In fact, you can make the argument that at least mothers have mothers can sacrifice themselves to their children, whereas God can't. So in some sense, you could say a mother's love is maybe a bit more
above God's love. Right?
In both cases, there are issues. A mother is biologically programmed. God is programmed by his attributes.
Right. He's programmed. That was the word I was about to use.
In a sense, it's more robotic love, pretty much.
That is a robotic love.
Both are imperfections, but compared to which one? Comparing the two, one comes up a little bit better in the sense at least the mother can sacrifice. Yeah, you're programmed to sacrifice, but still, that's still one little difference from God, who can't sacrifice.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense to say it's the purest. I don't know how to measure these things. It clearly is not. There's lots of inconsistency and contradictions there because it's not that dissimilar from the mother's love.
Right. Yeah, I think we covered a whole lot of ground and quite decisively dismissed Hamza's arguments. I think, at least we can probably do another stream on it, maybe, if we want to, maybe covering the rest of the points, maybe in half an hour or an hour or so. But I think this is a pretty decisive debunking of his, so even though this video is pretty old. And as Kali said, I think he wrote that what article probably 7-8 years back or so. maybe we can come back and just debunk the rest of the arguments as well. We have a guest here, Saeed bhai. Sorry, last time aap aaye the. So you were here, Saeed bhai, last time.
Yeah, yeah.
So we are probably gonna close the stream, Saeed bhai. We are almost touching
Okay,
3 hour mark. So maybe
okay,
in
okay,
5-10 minutes we're gonna close the stream.
okay,
You're
okay.
welcome. How are you doing? It's been a long time, right?
I'm doing great, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. You know,
So
there is a there is a hadith. It says God was hidden diamond, and He wanted to reveal. So yeah, God wanted to show that He created human being, so people could appreciate His creation. You know, the beauty, the animals. So He created human being. There is no animal creature who could appreciate God creation. So he wanted to some people who can see his creation and observe the whole creation. So he created a human being to people who could creature could appreciate his creation. Yeah.
right. So
So this is hadith.
he wants to be praised basically. He has
Yeah,
desires basically,
he has
right?
desires. Yes, so according to you, he has desires
You could say anything you want, but that's
that
what he
needs to be
wanted to.
fulfilled.
And he has
That
ego
needs
as
to be
well.
fulfilled.
That means he has ego as well because
Was
his
he was
desire.
he Saeed? Was he bored? Is
Huh?
it because he
Yeah.
was? Do you know? Like, was he bored? Like, was he getting? Did he need a fan?
Was he boredom in
That's-
boredom that
yeah.
he was
Like, think
sitting
about it
there
this
and
way. Yeah. If you're somebody who is self-consumed and need people to worship you, so you make like a mad
No,
scientist, and you're
he,
bored. One minute. And you're bored and you're lazy and you're not lazy. Sorry, you're bored and you don't have anything to do. So you create people so that they can love you and give you affection. Is that what it's like? Was he
you
getting
can
bored?
interpret any way you want. There is nothing wrong with that. Uh, mm, the worship
There is something
part
wrong with
of the
that.
worship.
There is something wrong with that. No, there is something
Huh?
wrong with it. There is something wrong with that because it makes God vulnerable to imperfections. God is not supposed to have these ego battles. He's supposed to be self-sufficient on his own.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he
So
has
so
been creating things. Look, he
no.
just look. He have created billions of creatures. You know, different
no,
variety of
that's your
creature.
assumption.
Does this?
That's your assumption, right? First thing first, you see the kind of ideology you're espousing creates a whole lot of issues. You have problem of a self-sufficient being desiring things. Then you have a problem of egos that Madan just told that is he egotistical because if he creates a being, why would he want them to worship him? Because then his ego is coming in between, right?
So
He's thinking, and
yeah,
then
worship, Allah said in the Quran, worship it's a benefit of human being, not his benefit. The worship
You
keep
just said
away.
no.
So
You
You
just
just
said
said it
let,
yourself.
let me
Yeah,
finish
you
the
just said it
first.
yourself.
Let me finish the
I know,
first part.
I know.
Let me finish the first thing. Then you can answer. The worship of God, like namaz, Allah said, it keep you away from doing evil thing. It's not for His benefit, but it's our benefit.
I know, Saeed. I know, Saeed. You forget that we know the Quran as well and the Hadiths and so on and so
Yeah,
forth.
you know.
The thing is,
Yes, I do.
Saeed. The thing is, Saeed. Initially, you said God needed it because He needed something to look back and revere
to
and amaze
appreciate him,
His
to
creation.
appreciate him.
He need to
Yeah.
appreciate Him. This is why I said he's got a bit of an ego. Now you're saying, no, God didn't need us. We need Him. That's a contradiction in your own thoughts. You see, which one? Your initial point is saying God needed us. Now you're saying God doesn't need us.
No, if God need us, he won't die if he don't create us. Okay, he's not depend on us.
No. Death,
Okay,
death isn't the only criteria of need. Death is not the entire. I won't die if I don't have a coffee. I still might need it, right?
yeah,
Similarly, he needed what you just said there in the beginning. You said God needed us so he can be appreciated. He needed appreciation. God needed appreciation. I'm not saying God will die and get appreciation. I'm saying God needed appreciation. That's an imperfection in God. And that contradicts self-sufficiency. Therefore, Allah can only exist if he's self-sufficient.
No, he had been doing that for before he created human being, but he wanted to create an intelligent creature who could observe, thing in the universe, who can observe, who can, create a
Why did he
guesswork.
need to create anything at all?
Because
Why did he
his
need
job to
why
create things.
why
He's
did
a
he need to create
creator.
huh?
He's a creator, so he creates things.
Why does he have to be creator?
So you want him to be non-existence?
No, do you understand what I'm saying, Saeed? If you're look, what does self-sufficient mean? Let me put it down to you. It's just simple mathematics. What does self-sufficient mean?
But he is not dependent on anybody else.
Not just that. It doesn't need anything either. He doesn't need food. He doesn't He doesn't need to change. Does he need to change?
No, he doesn't need to change anything.
Is all of his desires accomplished? Because if there's one desire unaccomplished, then he's not self-sufficient. All of his desires has to be accomplished.
That's okay. That's your interpretation, your understanding.
Yeah, no. So that is what self-sufficient means. So if you say now God had a desire to unfulfilled, right? So by definition, when you say
He's
God
not
needs,
self-sufficient,
because God needed to create us to fulfill maybe his final desire, maybe I don't know, or one of the desires, then he wasn't self-sufficient. If God was self-sufficient, he didn't need to create us.
So, Saeed bhai, just let me explain one simple thing. A simple thing.
Okay.
What's the meaning of creator? One who desires to create. Is that true? Is that definition right?
Creator means who has control to create things.
Does he have to have a desire to create or not?
Not really.
I don't know anything about that.
No, but
creator simply means
a mind has to have a desire to create, basically. I mean, I see your point, Mahajan.
Yes.
Because a robot can be a creator, right? A robot can be a creator. He doesn't have a desire per se.
God loves to create things, new things. He likes to create new things, and he loves whatever he create things. He loves it. So you can say God have a desire to love it.
Saeed, if before God created us, he had an unfulfilled desire, and then when he fulfilled it, he loved it, right?
He loved it from beginning. He loved every creation.
No.
He wanted to create a creature, human being,
we're not talking about loving
who can appreciate the thing he created.
Saeed bhai, Madan, just can you guys hold on for a minute? Kali, which one of your two? I see two of your those things. So which one should I remove?
The other one.
Okay, let's see.
Kylie's trying to do the matrix on Saeed.
Can you hear us fine? Still?
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
You're in a matrix. Okay, Saeed bhai, what we'll do is, let's see. What we'll do is, we'll probably run for another 3-4 minutes. You go back, listen to this whole stream, try to see a few points, and also think through all the logical possibilities of the arguments that you're giving. And Martin has said self-sufficiency is a huge problem in terms of creating humans and expecting them to worship you, basically, right? It's a huge problem. Basically, it's a contradiction, right? I mean, you just can't do away with that contradiction.
Not just the expectation of worship, but the fact that he needed to create anything all in the first place.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Right, which means he was like a artist who was getting bored and he drew pictures so he can enjoy it, or something like that, or he was a mad scientist who lived on his own and then created human beings so that they can look at the scientists and go, wow, you created me so beautifully, and he can then feel acknowledgement. But that doesn't sound like a self-sufficient being. A self-sufficient being will be always eternally satisfied and sufficient in everything.
Without creating, without
Yeah, he
anything
doesn't need.
creating.
Without
Just
creating.
just sit down on the chair and just enjoy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
You
Yes,
cannot conceive it, but
exactly.
that is what a self-sufficient being would be doing. He would
yeah,
not need to create anything at all.
So
The
exactly.
first
why?
hadith, the first hadith that you mentioned, so I want to elaborate on that as well. Hughes mentioned that God was a hidden treasure and he desired, I think that is a word that has been used, he desired to be seeked and to be appreciated and all that. So, what that clearly means is that after God created, what he wanted to improve his experience, right? His experience somehow improved because he desired it to happen, right? He desired to be appreciated, meaning he had an unfulfilled desire. And whenever you have an unfulfilled desire, and when it is fulfilled, there is a sort of an improvement in your experience. Do you think that there was an improvement in God's experience when he created humans and human beings appreciated him?
I think God do enjoy our appreciation. I think he do
Okay.
enjoy.
So
So
then
you
he's
think
not self-sufficient because he
he's not
changed his
self-sufficient?
position. He changed his position from being what he was than what he became, basically. Right?
Because God also has to be an unchanging being. You have to understand that as well. God cannot change. So if God's experience change, that is the essence of God. God's experience even cannot change. So you have to, make your conception of God very consistent in every way. The hadith that you just mentioned, that is very inconsistent with a self-sufficient and unchanging God. So you should look at you should sort of maybe revise your this and maybe categorize this hadith as one of those bad hadiths.
No, I think
What
that's
you
a
mentioned earlier.
I think that's a
Saeed bhai,
beautiful hadith.
Saeed
I
bhai,
think that is.
your trump card on you, by the way.
Yeah.
No, I think no. I think that's a beautiful hadith. Is explained
No, no,
why
just
God
kidding, just kidding,
created the
Saeed bhai,
things.
just kidding. Okay.
So yeah, yeah.
Or
So,
no, why don't you
but
do one
God
thing?
still can exist. Whatever you think he has a weakness,
See,
but he
Saeed
still
bhai,
exists.
this is one thing that I mean, everybody is does not feel good about. When you are being when somebody gives you a good reason against your best arguments, you just retract back and then just say, no, I have to believe in God. I mean, I just believe in God. That doesn't
No,
mean all your arguments keep getting debunked here, right?
but
And
this
then you
does
still
not
come and
prove.
say this really frustrates people,
Let's
and
see,
that's why they
let's see
just
what Said says. Let's see what Said
right.
says.
No, what you're saying here, he's not self-sufficient. Still, he can exist. In your definition
Yeah.
of he's not self-sufficient because he has desired to know, he wanted to know, appreciate him. Uh,
He could
even that
this a
he can
being
exist.
a being could exist. Look, Said, I agree. A being could exist that wanted to create people for his own appreciation. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, it's a contradiction to say that being is self-sufficient. If a being is not self-sufficient, yeah. So either God, either Allah, that the origin, the person who you believe wrote the Quran or spoke the Quran, I should say, or relayed it. Technically speaking, he didn't speak it.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
God of the Quran, the
yeah, God of
Allah
the
of the Quran.
yeah. If he just retracts that he's actually he's actually a changing being, he's actually not a self-sufficient being, then fine. But he can't simultaneously at the same time say I'm self-sufficient, but I had these desires to fulfill. Can you see that? That's all we mean. So whatever this
Also,
being is,
also that he's perfect. Also that
yeah,
he's perfect and
yeah,
self-sufficient and all these, right?
yeah, it could still exist, but in a different way. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
He probably different way. I believe our understanding of God is not the same as he reality of God. Okay, because we are not comprehend the God fully. Okay, our imagination, we are playing with our imagination. God may have flaw. God may have flaw.
No.
he may one
Okay.
he
Okay.
make mistakes and correct it. So we think God cannot make mistake. This is our we are putting on God, but I believe
Can you hear Saeed? Okay.
yes, I can.
No, what?
Uh,
Yeah,
No, no.
Saud bhai,
Lot of
first
problems.
of all, congratulations, you are out of the fold of Islam. Okay,
Yeah.
now
so,
talk about
I
Islam.
think no, no, no,
Now talk
no, no.
about
I
Islam.
think no, no. I
Muslim
think also
Muslim
now Saeed. No, no. Sorry, Saeed. You also have to make another display picture now, which says good verses. Say yes to good verses and say no to bad verses in the Quran, because now
Exactly.
you
That's
have
what I was.
now what you're
no
saying is not in line with Quran even. So
yes,
what you just said. No, no. Listen. What you just said, that God can have flaws. Maybe he can improve things. He can learn from his mistakes and all that kind of things. This does not align with what. No, no, no.
it,
If that is the kind of that if that is the kind of God that you believe in, that then whatever is written in Quran, that is not exactly true. And then either he's lying or he has made mistakes in the Quran as well. I'm not
you
sure
know
why would you follow
Exactly.
such a book.
Exactly. Then
you know
you shouldn't
people
believe
say
in that book as well.
people say God is all knowing. Okay, but in the Quran, Allah what say, whatever He create things, everything He created, how He created, He written down those things. He does not keep within His mind. Okay, He He put
A
in
very good
somewhere.
point, Said. A very good
Just
point.
just like we when we create something, what you do, we put in the data in the computer, right? How we created this formula or all those things detail you put in the formula, because you cannot keep all those information within your brain. So what we do, we put in the computer. Allah says same thing. Everything, universe, how He created every single creature, how He created, He put it down in the Lohe Mahfuz. It's like a data collector. It's just a supercomputer you think. It's called Lohe Mahfuz. He put all those every single detail. He put that in the data in the Lohe Mahfuz. So God Himself does not remember things. All the thing He has, He created things. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so this
No, no,
is in the Quran.
So,
so
no,
this
no.
is this.
Sorry,
Said bhai, I think
sorry.
let's
Saeed,
wrap it up. Okay,
yeah, just
uh, let's wrap
no,
it
no,
up.
no, let's just
Sorry,
wrap
go
it
ahead.
up.
Go
And
ahead.
no, no, what I'm saying is that, I think then I might believe that Quran is from such kind of a God, because I think the Quran was the first draft probably with a lot of mistakes, and then he still had to learn a lot. And then probably, later on, maybe there are some good versions that we haven't received yet. So maybe that is the case, right?
Evolution. I think God is improve
No,
our.
Said bhai, don't go to another point. No evolution
Okay,
in
okay.
between. Okay,
Yeah,
All
so
right, all right, all right.
just want to, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you,
carry.
sir,
You
for
wanted to say.
taking me.
yeah. Okay.
No, Said
Thank
bhai,
you, Saeed.
I'm just gonna tell you one thing. I'm really happy for you that you live in India, right? And you don't. I'll suggest you don't go to any masjid and say all these things that you are saying here. Even in
I
India, you'll
understand.
get in huge trouble. Even in India, you'll get in huge trouble. By the way,
Yes,
right?
yes, it's true, it's
And
true.
I'm
I agree.
thankful that you're not in Pakistan.
Even in my family, I get a threat.
So
So
yeah,
it's true, it's
seriously,
true.
seriously,
Because
Take care of
take
yourself.
care. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm not afraid of anybody. I can tell truth any place, anywhere, any I
Yeah,
want. I can
you have made
no
up a religion of your own. I think what it is, I don't know. It is
no my
Saidism or something like
understanding
that.
of my own.
No,
Yes,
but you are. I think what's happening is, Said, with you, is you still are holding on to those straws that were inculcated in you since the childhood. You
no
have,
no.
in your somehow your reasoning, you can get to some of the things, but still you are trying to clutch on to some of the childhood you know
No, I'm
what do you call
old, 65
indoctrination,
year
maybe.
old, but people believe in God. I mean, I'm different from, look, childhood, I have a different Islam, people say, I have the different, I grew up from those things, I don't believe what a Muslim believe about it. So I'm not the same thing following what I have been told.
All right. I think we'll close it at here. Martin, Kali, you want to ask anything
No,
to
no,
Said Bhai, or shall we close the stream?
no, it's fine.
All
No,
right.
no.
Shall we? All right. We'll close the stream then. Said Bhai, thank you very much for dropping by. Nice talking to you. What I'll suggest to you is go back and listen to the stream. Listen to our
Okay.
arguments carefully. And
All
then
right.
maybe come back and ask the questions, right? And then all these things that they'll make sense, right? The self-sufficiency and all those things, right? We didn't discuss those points here in the stream per se, but listen to it and you'll get a deeper perspective on these deep questions, right? And we'll talk to you later on. Okay.
All right. Thank you and good night, good morning, whatever you have.
All right. All right. Bye bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. It turned out to be a decent stream, I think, Madan and Kelly. And I think what I'll do as a last ritual before we leave is anybody who's gonna watch this stream, please like, subscribe, share as much as you can. Please do, and this is a humble request that write something under the stream section as comments, because somehow our streams are not getting as much attention as they should get.
Yeah.
At least we think we should get
Let me just
more
let me just
attention. That
call. Yeah, let me just make a call for the 4 people who are watching. Please subscribe. It's a more of a request simply because we're not getting the traction that we think we should have been getting. Perhaps maybe
and
we're
what
we're too philosophically heavy in the sense that we go deep into the topic. Maybe it's too technical. But if you're there and you're watching it, please subscribe or at least spread the word. Find your friends who are like-minded, who are willing to listen. Anybody who is willing to listen to this, learn about talk to us and so on, spread it to them, who's into philosophy, because they may find the long, boring hours to sit down and listen to us explore these thoughts. But it's we've been asking for that for a while, and we've not been getting the same sort of the type of traction that we predicted. So I
Right.
hope that you guys take it seriously. Do genuinely. I want to see some of these numbers rise. If you're watching now, just subscribe. Press the subscribe button. Press the like button. Leave a comment. Right? Have a debate. Something. Okay.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
and
we have a
I
comment from Abdul. Yeah, we have a comment from Abdul. Are you guys still
yeah,
doing? Yes,
Yeah. We are.
we are
and
marathoners, by the way. Yeah.
We've not streamed in a while. You see, it's been like maybe what nearly 2 weeks. So I think that's
Yeah,
why
we've it's
Friday
after like
night.
I think 8th of
Yeah.
October, 8th of November we streamed probably, or 7th of November. Did I say
Okay.
October? November.
Yeah.
November. So yeah,
yeah,
anybody who's
and
watching, see you don't want you if you want to see more of these streams, please do subscribe and comment under the stream.
But Abdul,
Kali,
yeah, yeah, and
Abdul,
I want,
Abdul, we
yeah,
are going now.
please,
Yeah.
please let us know in the comment section, why do you think, if you think that God is worthy of worship, why do you think so? And what do you think what worship is? What is worship when you think about it? So that is a question that I think I'll leave our audience with. And if you guys agree with us, why do you agree with us? What points did you like?
right,
So yeah,
and yeah, all right. Thank you very much, guys, Madan and Kali. Nice. This was a nice stream. I genuinely really enjoyed this stream. So, and for everybody who's listening and is gonna listen, ciao for now, and see you guys later. Talk to you guys later. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
See you later. Bye bye. Bye bye.